For another day of Odinmade Hero, this series where I do my best to follow along with Casey Muratori and write Handmade Hero in Odin. And it figures that right as I start the stream, while my wife is putting down one kid, the other kid starts screaming. And now that I've started talking, my dog thinks that there's a stranger in the house. He's in the garage, and he hears me. He's barking at me right now. So, that's great. I gotta go stop him. Real nice, man. I mean, look, I do not lament a dog for barking at all, because that's what they do. Dogs bark. But, like, bark at an actual intruder. Learn to distinguish my voice from the voice of an intruder. Just, like, put that math together, you know? Stop that fiend. Yeah, it's just like anybody. He hears any, especially if it's a man's voice, because men are more threatening, right? But if he hears any bassy tones coming through the walls, he's like, never should have come here. Why is my chat not working? Hold on, I gotta refresh this. Well, I'm seeing comments coming through, so I know I'm at least live correctly on one platform. Looks like we're good on both YouTube and Twitch. I've been toying with the idea of doing this stream on like TikTok or something too, because I'm paying for restreaming to 3 different platforms, but I haven't taken the time to look at the formatting aspect of that, where like if I stream this on TikTok is like a, portrait mode thing, right? So I feel like it wouldn't work out. So maybe what I'll just wind up doing is posting clips to TikTok and not actually streaming there. Maybe stream somewhere else. Like I know some people stream to Twitter or whatever. It's a whole new day. There's all these new places. There's some platform called Mastodon. I don't even think you can stream there. Maybe you can. I don't know. I could just be out of the loop. But let's try and get back on task after that disruptive beginning here to another week. So, yeah, like I was saying, trying to follow along with Casey. We ended off last week on a bit of a bummer note. What's Twitter, he says. What's Twitter? I mean, what is Twitter? It's not Twitter anymore, right? It's X. It'll always be Twitter. So yeah, we floundered at the end of the very last stream, trying to get the game to run correctly. It was compiling, and I think I kept on saying something about how I was breaking the compiler. It was actually compiling just fine, but the runtime was breaking. Breaking. I was getting to the point where we were compiling and we were running it, but when we went to run the game, it would crash. And the failure made no sense to me. It still doesn't really make sense to me, but I was able to figure out what the actual bug was, and I'll get to that in a second. But I did want to mention that the new YouTube channel did hit 400 subs over the weekend. So again, thanks to everybody that is discovering that new channel and going over there. And thank you for having an interest in whatever it is going on here. I don't know where this leads. I really don't. I'm just kind of chasing my own curiosity and what compels me to learn, and seeing where this road goes, because I really don't know exactly where I wind up. Hey, Will, thank you. You too, if you're streaming today. Have a good next stream whenever you stream again. I know we still need to catch up. That opportunity will come, I'm sure. So anyway, yeah, we were trying to get this to work correctly, and when I run this, we can see, oh, this is, I see. I was messing around with printing some stuff out before the stream, and now it doesn't want me to use that import, or it doesn't want me to import the format package without using it. So we were getting this assertion here, which I think, yeah, I'm kind of blocking some of it, but you can see here that we're tripping this assert at line 310. This is line 310 that I have highlighted here. We're asserting that the size of our game state, this struct here, which just stores the world position, right? There's nothing else in there. We're asserting that that is less than or equal to the entire game memory that we've allocated. And I was printing that out at the end of the last stream, and I was like, this makes no sense. It's obvious here when we print out the values that actually there's just no way that this can be tripping. So the error makes no sense. We've kind of broken the Odin runtime, but ultimately it is my fault because I made a stupid mistake. I did a little bit of investigation into this on Saturday to figure out what was going on, and I was able to quickly determine with some print debugging, which is just great when you have no actual debugger that you can start to step through. But it's worked for me in so many cases like this where I've gotten stuck on something that didn't make sense, and so I rolled with it and I figured it out. But this is still a thing. This runtime assertion making no sense is still a thing, and I don't know how to begin to try and unravel it. So I'm just going to solve the problem and kind of make a mental note for myself. I was asking on the Odin language Discord what could be going on here, and one of the contributors was kind enough to start a conversation with me about it and said that maybe what did he say, or she, I'm not sure. This person said that the source line mapping could be wrong. So meaning like the actual error is happening somewhere, right? The error that's actually causing the problem, not this assert. And then for whatever reason, the actual error is propagating in such a way that it's telling us that there's a runtime assertion here when the runtime assertion is somewhere else. I don't know. I'm on Windows right now. I compiled and ran it on Mac OS, and I got an error that made sense, that kind of hinted more strongly at what the actual problem was. And the actual problem, it turned out to be, was that in, I think it's get tile chunk maybe. Yeah. So it turns out the actual issue is here. And it's really a rookie mistake. I tried dereferencing a nil pointer. This right here, this tile chunk, which we've specified as a pointer, we want to return a pointer to a tile chunk. I was calling the tile members, or trying to assign tile members. I was trying to assign to the tiles member of this tile chunk pointer, but it's a nil pointer. And so you dereference a nil pointer and your whole program blows up. Really rookie mistake. I didn't catch that at first, but it's because, and I pointed this out too when we were writing this code initially. I was looking at it and I was like, the way Casey is doing this is just, kind of it's scrambling my brain a little bit, because he doesn't do it this way, because his struct has the same member. It has this tiles member, but he actually just does this. He assigns to the address of the indexed tile because he has a multi-pointer, right? So he's saying, my tile chunk begins, the address, my pointer begins at the address of whatever tile it is we care about. The index of the chunk, we should say. Or I guess the index into the chunk's tiles. It's just, I know this is confusing, and hopefully I'm doing a good job explaining this, but the point is that he was able to do this, and I cannot, because I'm not using multi-pointers. I'm using slices. So the way around this, and I think this is fine to do it this way, it's a little bit different from the way he's doing it, but because we're using slices and I want to try to stick to doing things that way, I decided, I'm just going to return not a pointer, and we're going to return the not a pointer to a tile chunk. We're gonna actually return the value, which holds the address to the tiles we care about in the slice within that tiles member right here. Hopefully that makes sense. So, we're gonna use it and then we're gonna throw it away when we're done with it, but the memory is still hanging around. All this is saying is that we want this slice to these tiles to be pointing at the place in the world, the chunk in the world that we care about. Yeah, so that means that down here, this has to be an address of, because now we get the actual tile chunk value instead of a pointer to a tile chunk value back from get tile chunk. And I'm really not happy with this name. I kind of just want to say get chunk because we know we're talking about tile chunks, right? Like I think what it maybe actually should be is like get world chunk because it's a chunk in the world. I don't know. There's no right or wrong answer here. I'll just leave it alone for now because I know this code is going to keep changing over time and we'll wind up in a better place with it. I think a lot of the naming that gets used has world in it. And so I just don't want to preemptively change a bunch of stuff because then it'll just confuse things further as we continue to change the code. Once it becomes more set in stone, then we can think about being creative with names. And it's really just up to me anyways. But to make life easier, I just have to try and stick to things a little bit closer to what Casey does them. But we can't always do that just because he can use function overloading and I can't. Because Odin doesn't have that. So anyway, now that we're not getting a pointer back, we have to turn this into a pointer to this thing here, right? To get at the actual tile value that we care about. And then we're done with that chunk. So it doesn't matter that, you know, we're returning a pointer or not here. It's just like we want to, what we really care about is getting at the tile value at that chunk, at the tile relative X and Y, right? In that chunk that we care about. So hopefully that makes sense. And that gets us to a point where I think we can build and run. Yep. But now we have a new problem, which is that something that I was naively trying to do to actually convert the tiles that we've laid out in the 2D array was just, you know, it was bad. And I kind of left it alone because I just wanted to make further progress and get closer to the end of the stream, or get closer to the end of the day of code that we had to write. And I actually didn't get quite that far because you can see the movement code has changed, and I'll kind of talk about that a little bit here in a second. But so this right here, the tiles that we've kind of manually written in here for our tile map, those are basically all being written out in one contiguous block of 18 by 34 U32s. And it's the right size, you know, that's the right size, but it's all contiguous. And we, you know, we're talking about that in that stream and how this is just not going to work. And so that was one of the other things I did over the weekend, is I kind of looked at how to do this a little bit more intelligently so that's actually doing the right thing. And that is what I ultimately decided to do. Was we're just going to do this like we're doing here. We're going to declare the 2D array that's the size that the way Casey is declaring it. I tried different ways to instantiate it, you know, like this, where, you know, we say here is the size of the tiles that we want to put in the world, and here is the tiles that we want to fill out, but I want to leave the rest of it empty. And I was kind of looking at different ways of how to try and do this, but nothing really worked out. Like I tried using this partial directive, but it just doesn't work the way that I was imagining it would work. It's not meant to be used with declaring a fixed array. I think it can be used for, well, I am using it for, like, for instance, in here for some switch statements. We do a partial switch on the operating system that we're on so that we can determine what extension to give the shared library that we use for our game code. It's partial because I don't have to be comprehensive with what this can evaluate to, because there's a bunch of other targets that this, I'm not really sure what to call it, but it's one of those things that Odin just kind of gives you the ability to evaluate, kind of like Odin debug is another thing, like whether or not we're running in debug mode or compiling in debug mode, or whether we're on Windows or Linux. I'm probably doing a bad job of explaining this, but the point is that didn't work. None of that worked. So I'm going to stick with this And then what I did for actually filling in the tiles that we care about, I decided that I would just make a new 2D slice. This wound up being the sanest way. I also like just went with like dynamic arrays at one point, which is a thing in Odin. I could just do something like this just as easily, and I think it would work. But what you can actually do is just say, I want a 2D slice, and then fill that 2D slice with all this memory, and now we've implicitly got the dimensions that we care about. And what's nice about that is I didn't want to have to hard code these values, right? That was what I was trying to avoid when it came down to it. I just didn't want to have to do this, because what if we add in like another, you know, tile map, either going wider this way or deeper this way, and whatever dimension it is that we care about. You know, if we want more rooms to go out to, you probably can't see that, or maybe you can. If we wanted to add more rooms going out this way, which I don't think we do, but I was just trying to think of it for the sake of, you know, the learning aspect of it, because none of this is going to really stick around. But the point is now we don't have to declare those dimensions, and then down here, we just copy the memory from those slices into the tile map, into the 2D tiles here that we declare. And assuming I didn't, what did I call this? Filled files? That's filled tiles. There. So now we just go over every single row in that 2D slice that we care about, and then we get the empty row out of our 2D array, and then we just copy that memory from the filled row in. And I guess I could make this even more explicit so it's very obvious what is going on here. And then we just fill up to the length of the row, and now we can add whatever we want to this 2D slice. And like, let's say I wanted to add in all ones across the board here, which would make it so that we can't actually navigate through the whole map, but we could do that. And now you can see I've actually changed. Did I change it to, I changed it to all zeros, not to all ones. I meant to change it to all ones, but you can see that I've actually changed the layout of the tile map, but now it's actually rendering properly. We're storing those tile values exactly where we wanted to. And I can roll that back. I can actually do what I meant to do, which was make them all ones. It's hard to like say what you intend to do and then actually do it. My brain can only let me do one of those things correctly at once. But now you can see here, now we've got those tiles all filled in, and we can't cross down past that boundary in the tile map. And there you go. I think that's about it for wrapping up that last day. I wanted to get this far with at the end of the last stream, but it just didn't work out that way, and I don't think I can always expect it to, because I'm going to get stuck on stuff, and then it's going to be on me to go and figure it out, and then explain it back on stream, not just for myself, but for anybody who cares, right? Because I know some of you were getting invested in the, you know, the problem I was dealing with. So anyway, yeah, well, sounds good. Just hit me up on whatever, or I'll do it, you know, as soon as I have a free moment. My life is a little bit insane right now, but I promise if you don't reach out to me first, I'll get to you eventually, and we'll make that time. So anyway, yeah, that's that. Oh, and then the other thing, the one last thing, was that the, was it like relative row stuff? Yeah, so this movement code has changed, and you can tell as we're scrolling around in the game, right, that this looks a bit different. Instead of the camera being fixed on the dimensions of the tile map, we're actually doing a kind of smooth scrolling now. It's not really smooth scrolling, it's more like stutter scrolling, but you can see that wherever our player rectangle is, we are fixed into the middle of the screen or the frame buffer. Like, that's where the camera always is, but as we move over onto a different tile, the center of the screen switches to be fixed around whatever tile the player rectangle is on. And so I'm imagining we might make that actually smooth during today's round of coding, but that's what happened here. nothing really too exciting about it. Just had to modify the way that we were treating the column and row that we were on within the tile map, because these loops, these nested for loops, or this nested for loop was iterating over, the tile map or the tile chunk that we were on, but now it's all relative to the player position. So hopefully that made sense. Do I have a Discord? No, I do not. I hang out in some Discords, though. I don't really have the patience or the desire to have my... I did have a Discord a long time ago with a buddy of mine for a different channel that we had, but I think that Discord was, put out of its misery a long time ago. It's not something that I'm super interested in dealing with at this point in time, but maybe someday. I do hang out in the Odin language Discord and a few others, but that's about it. So anyway, that is that. Now we can catch up with Casey and move forward and see what we have in store for us today. What's the title here of today's round of coding? It's tile map memory. So we're just going to be doing more stuff with tile maps for the foreseeable future. Yeah, sounds good. I mean, you can shoot me your Discord. If you just ask me if I have a Discord, Will, you can shoot me your handle via Whisper or something, and I'll add you as soon as I get off the stream. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in and see what happens today. Oh, wait, I got to ban somebody. I got to ban a bot real quick. You're gone. Okay. Take it away, Casey.
There we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 34 of Handmade Hero, the show where we code a complete game from scratch using nothing but our bare typing fingers. You may ask, why are we doing this? And a lot of people do ask a lot of times, why aren't you using this? Why aren't you using that? Why do you use this editor? Why do you use this language? Why don't you use an engine? And a lot of the answer to that is actually kind of complicated, and I suppose that I don't explain it often enough, so maybe I'm just going to take a couple minutes here just to say why we do what we do on the stream and why I think it's important. So basically, the first thing I just want to point out to everyone out there, and this has really nothing to do with my own personal preference or anything like that, the game industry runs on C and C++. That is just the truth of the situation, and basically almost everything that you play was programmed in C and C++. The engine for the game was written in C and C++, and it is extraordinarily rare to find games where that is not true. Doesn't mean you can't. There are examples of games written in all sorts of languages out there that you could find, and that's always good, but everything that you know about and everything that sets the bar for gaming is C and C++. If you go out and you buy the best-selling game of last Christmas, if you buy Call of Duty or you buy, Grand Theft Auto,
Yeah, I understand. I confused myself reading what you said here, Will. You have a Discord. I do have a Discord, handle. I don't have a server. I'm used to when people ask that question, I'm used to, framing it through, do you have a server? And the answer is no, I do not have a server. I do have a Discord. Sorry for the confusion.
Weren't written in F#, they weren't written in C#, they weren't written in Java, they weren't written in Python, they weren't written in PHP, they weren't written in JavaScript, they weren't written in HTML5. They were written in C and C++. So at the bottom of the basically at the base layer of every game, that is what is there. And maybe someday that'll change, it's hard to say. But the truth of the matter is C and C++ is what runs the game industry. And so at least for the time being, that is what people need to know if they are programming games and they are programming games seriously at a low level trying to do performance-oriented programming. That is just what the game industry runs on. Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't go programming something else, depending on what your goals are, but it does mean that when I do teaching on this stream to try and teach low-level game programming, that is what we are going to use because that is the industry standard. So that is just the case. Now, I happen to like C and C++ as well. I like having control over what I program. And one of the reasons that I like C and C++ a lot is because I like to basically be able to nitpick every little thing. I'm very detail-oriented in that way, and I like to be able to know that after I go over my first pass of programming, I always have that room to kind of go down there and drill down into every little bit and have complete control. I don't want the language doing anything for me. I want to be able to do it all myself. And that's just sort of a philosophical thing, and I don't want to foist it on anyone else, but I could just basically tell you that that is the way I make games, and that is the way I enjoy making games. I think there's something kind of just at a fundamental level, really very much fun about programming a computer directly. It's why I got into this business in the first place. It's what still gets me excited about things when I'm actually programming. I like being the person who is in control right from the CPU all the way up. And in fact, to be honest with you, nothing aggravates me more these days than the fact that the operating system is kind of in my way. I really don't love it. And it's one of the reasons that one of my personal goals for the stream is to eventually get us to the point where we're programming on a Raspberry Pi, because I would like to get the operating system completely out of the picture so that we can start doing stuff at a really low level. And maybe we can even try to do that on the PC sometime, but the problem is the sort of the mess of devices and specifications for how the devices work on the PC makes it a lot harder to do something like that in a short time scale. So anyway, that is why we are using what we are using. And one of the big things that I just want to say is, like, if that is something that people, aren't super interested in, that's totally cool. I don't want to be dogmatic about stuff. I think everyone should use what they want to use to program. But I would also say that there's something to be said for the fact that low-level programming does have really some pretty interesting results, and that we have made some pretty amazing things with it. If you look back over the history of game programming, C and assembly language have given us some of the most formative gaming experiences that have ever occurred. Things like Doom and Quake back in the old days, all the way up to the things that you play today. And I think there's just something kind of interesting about that, and I do think that it's worth learning. I also think that the more you know about how to program a computer at a low level, the more powerful you are even at the high level. So when you do jump up and you start using someone's prefab engine like Unity or Unreal or something like this, and when you do jump up there and you use something that's like a higher level language, you want to use C#, you want to use something like that, knowing what it is that those languages have to do to provide the services to you that they provide, such as garbage collection or such as the animation system in Unity or any of these sorts of things, does kind of put you at a significant advantage to someone who has no idea how those services work. Because if you've been there and you've implemented one of those systems yourself someday, even if you choose not to use it, because someone else provides a better system that you can license, knowing how it worked allows you to use it in a much more intelligent way and avoid the kind of pitfalls that often happen when people who don't know anything about these sorts of systems or how they work try to implement relatively complicated games in higher level languages or engines. Going into those sorts of problems, not knowing what the support engine and what the libraries have to do in order to do the things you're asking them to, makes it really hard for you to sort of make good decisions about how you use them and how you structure the code even at a high level. The truth is, we just haven't gotten to the point yet where people can program games and not care about the hardware or not know anything about it. Maybe if your game is very, very simple, that's true, but as your game gets more and more complicated and more taxing on the system, it really becomes important for you to know, sort of at least at a basic level, how all these things work.
Everybody has an opinion, right? And I'm certainly not educated enough, and I certainly don't have the industry experience that Casey does to be able to speak to the things he's speaking to and really expect anybody to take me seriously. But I will say that the things he's talking about are kind of speaking to the fact that you have an instance of a game like Cyberpunk 2077 coming out, right? And it's such an ambitious game. It's such a big game. And there was like crunch and all this other stuff associated with it, I remember. But I remember people complaining about how buggy it was. You'd see some people saying, I didn't have any problems with it. But like by and large, that was just like the sentiment that I would read online about it. I never played the game, I never bought it, but those were just the sort of things I would see online at the time when that game came out, and that's kind of what he's speaking to here, I think, right? Is like when you've got such a complex thing that you're trying to do, which is build a 3D game that has all of these contemporary things going on, both graphically and otherwise, gameplay mechanic wise, whatever. When you're too far away, when you're too far away, abstracted from like the what the hardware is doing, it allows all of this cruft to get in that makes it harder to actually understand why a bug is happening the way it's happening. And I think this is part of why I've been drawn more towards getting a better understanding of the hardware side, because coming from like the web programming world, where so much of the time it doesn't really matter. It always does matter. It's just once you hit certain pressure points on the performance of a certain thing, that's when all of a sudden you're like, oh, like what is the reality, the physical reality of what's taking place here? How can I make the CPU do things more efficiently? Then you start to care about those things, but it's just not always obvious what it is you're going to care about it and why you would care about it until you start seeing the fact that dollars and cents start to add up when you're doing things inefficiently, or you're creating a terrible user experience. And I think that's the thing that Casey is, more concerned about, because to him, that translates directly to dollars and cents. If your thing performs really slowly, and for the example that I would use, right, is I'm implementing some search API that somebody needs to hit, and I want them to have a response in less than 1/10 of a second. 100 milliseconds is like the max amount of time that I really want them to be waiting to get a response back. For him, it's like if the user experience is terrible on a game and it's really slow, then obviously they're not going to want to play your game, and they're going to tell other people, don't buy this game, it runs like crap. So that, actually has an impact on the outcome of the money wise, but it's kind of like you want to focus on what is the outcome to the user versus like strictly like what is the dollars and cents, because that's not the whole story, right? And that's where like a lot of, I think, misunderstanding comes through when people try to talk about, like, let's use the right tool for the job. They fixate on the what, and they've been promised that X tool can do all the things and they can do all the things cheaply, but you still have to use the tool. You still have to apply it and do things with the tool. So it's not enough to concentrate on just one or the other. You have to keep both in mind. Like, what is the application? What is the thing you're trying to do? How you're doing it, will be informed by what you're trying to accomplish, and vice versa. It's not like there's no rule set that you can apply that is universal in all cases, because there's nuance to every single problem set. That all just felt like nonsense coming out of me, but hopefully you understand what I'm driving at, is that you can't apply, it's like why we try to come up with rules in software development. It's to make it a more sane thing, to where you can be like, just do X, Y, Z in this, specified order and you'll get a good outcome, but you just cannot do that. There is no rule set. There are some general guidelines, but you can't treat them like actual rules, because then you're just adhering to the rule set. You'll also hear people pay they'll pay homage to that thing, and they'll speak to it, but they won't actually live up to what it is they're saying when they say something like people over process, meaning like communicate and problem solve with the actual people that you have to work with to do a thing, rather than be like, but we didn't do this step, or we added this step. It should be like this. It's not like this black and white. We can just make everything go through a filter, and that filter will work for everything.
So personally, I just think it's a great idea for everyone to have the experience just once, to kind of go through the complete pipeline of a game and see how everything works from the bottom all the way up to the top. It's very, very empowering. I think it's a great idea, and it doesn't take that long to do. An hour a night is all we're doing here, and I think we make great progress. There's so much that you can learn in just that hour, or if you even go off and do it on your own, there's so much that you can learn in just a little bit of time. And so I highly recommend that everyone seriously consider that, even if they are someone who thinks that it's a waste of time to program C and C++ or a waste of time to write your own engine. I'm not here to convince you otherwise, but I am here to say there is a lot to learn about how things work, and the more you know about that, the more empowering it is. And there's also a surprising amount of fun to be had at the lower levels when you start to get pretty facile with it, and don't knock it. There's something to be said for that. Back in the 70s and the 80s, huddling over a personal computer and just figuring out how to make it do the basic stuff that it could do was just a really rewarding experience, I think, for a lot of people, and I think we can have those kind of experiences again. So I think there's just a lot of positive stuff to say about the sort of stuff that we're doing on Handmade Hero. So I would encourage everyone to maybe not focus so much on questions about whose language is better, or what editor you should be using, or why you're not using an engine, those sorts of things, because really those questions don't matter very much. When you are making a game, the big picture and the big questions often are a lot more important than those things, and it's really about the craftsmanship, your knowledge of the programming, your knowledge of how to use the hardware, and your kind of ability to focus on what's important in a project that really matters. And so I think we're doing a pretty good job of this on this stream, and I think we made some really great progress. We haven't even made it through one full work week yet.
So you just kind of touched on that as well, which is the thing that, like, people want to talk about a tool as if this tool is like the thing that's going to get you to the outcome where you want to be at. He said it a lot more, concisely than I was able to, but point still stands. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that the thing that's so weird about my buddy Will reaching out to me again after I hadn't seen him or talked to him in so long is that Will, for those, I don't think the topic of Will has never come up on my old YouTube channel, but Will is actually like the progenitor to the rest of my YouTube audience in a very big sense. Him and I grew up together. We played a lot of hockey when we were, young kids, and we kept playing hockey together up to, the point where we were both graduating high school. We were in the same year and everything, but we went to different schools. But we met playing hockey. But what we also did was we played a lot of games together. And it reminded me when Casey mentioned Doom and Quake being, kind of these original games that spawn all these different other games that would be created. Like, Doom Killers was like a kind of a phenomenon for a long time, where people wanted to make like the game that would beat Doom, much in the same way that like the COD killer idea came about years and years later. Yeah, this is some serious Will lore we're getting. But back in the day, it would be me and my buddy Will sitting on the couch or sitting on my bed, and we're playing games in my room, whether it's like, Elder Scrolls Oblivion or whatever. And we would he was like the progenitor audience, watching me just fumble my way through these games. And, I'd getting a tough boss fight or something, and I'd just start, swearing, and or I'd be like, where the hell is this thing? Like, there's something about that. And then around the same time that's happening, that old school, like, Let's Play YouTube scene is starting to emerge with, like, Seamus and all these other people. And then I just decided to jump into that, like, in the deep end, and then I just kind of went that direction for a long time. But yeah, it's just funny to think. And I don't think we ever played Doom or Quake, but we played a ton of Halo. I remember that. And there was another game that was actually, like, very clearly Quake inspired. I do remember playing Quake when I was a kid, but there was this Game Boy Advance game called Dark Arena, I think, that was, like, heavily like Doom and Quake inspired. Like, it just, everything about that game, it had Doom and Quake in its DNA. So anyway, so just the timing is weird. Now I'm learning to, like, build games, and a primary motivator for me is to, like, build games that my kids want to play. I just think it would be so neat to be able to play, or to be able to make a game that is, relatively modest in scope, but enough to, like, it's interesting enough to where my kids could have fun playing them. That would be just, there'd be something about that I think is so special, and that's really what I'm working towards here. I was shocked when you told me you were making money on YouTube at that time. Yeah, dude, it was not something that you could do and not get weird looks from people when you told them, yeah, I make money making YouTube videos and posting them to the internet. Especially, like, I'm just playing games. I'm playing Minecraft over here, and I'm getting paid money. People look at you like, you're some kind of simpleton. But you could, and, like, a lot of the people that I wound up meeting through doing that were making outrageous amounts of money doing it. I never really got to that level, but there were a lot of people that I was around that time in my life that were making tons and tons of money playing Minecraft. And spoiler alert, a lot of them weren't all that happy doing it. And so that was one of the things that kind of made me get deep into that, path, and start to realize, oh, maybe this isn't all it's cracked up to be. But that's a conversation for another time. The point is, this idea now that people hear, oh yeah, I make money, doing content creation stuff. I think some people do it to try and have some kind of status associated with, like, being a content creator, but you wouldn't have people trying to do it for that reason, or looking at it in that way back when I was doing it, because I'm a dinosaur. I've been there and done that back when it was so just out there to the idea of making ad revenue from posting stuff on the internet. But now, like, an entire industry, right? Like, a massive industry has emerged out of that phenomenon. And it really just stems from people. Originally, it stemmed from people just wanting to create something interesting and share it with people and connect with other people. And now you have, like, all of this, and it was true even then, a lot of corporations started identifying ways to start to advertise things by pouring money into, manufacturing content that would then advertise the thing. You saw a lot of that even then. But yeah, we've come a long way. Decrepit old man. Yeah, man, I'm in my 30s now. It's all over. That's ridiculous. I have so much life left to live. And, like, I've been partially inspired. Like, a good example, and I'm plugging him again because he's awesome, and I'll plug him as often as I can manage on stream, but Carl Zielinski over on his YouTube channel, he's, like, in his mid-30s, so he's a bit older than me, but he's worked on games professionally, but he always wanted to make games himself, like, just on his own. He always aspired to, and he finally did, like, within the last year. He managed to make and release a game, and if he can do it when he's in his mid-30s, I can do that when I'm in my early 30s. I could have done it 10 years ago. I was just never properly motivated to go down that path, and I never expected I would, because once I started getting into programming as a career, it just became clear to me, based on reading all the anecdotal evidence out there, that a lot of people were miserable working in game dev, right? So I didn't go, like, the enterprise, I'm going to go work for Activision, or I'm going to go work for Bethesda, or any one of these companies, because not only are the chances of you actually getting to work for those companies so small because the competition is so fierce, but once you get in, the work balance is so tough. And I was always trying to veer back towards, like, well, I want to be a present father. I want to be a present husband. I don't want to be just totally enveloped by, or enveloped. How do you want to pronounce it? However you want to pronounce that. I didn't want to be totally enveloped. Now I can say the word right. I didn't want to have my whole life revolve around the work that I was doing. It's a balance that I've always tried really hard to strike well, but it's not easy. It's a constant process of figuring out where that balance is. And the older I get, the more I fixate on my family and less on, the work, because there's always going to be more work to do. It doesn't matter how much work you do on any given day, any given week, any given month. There's always going to be more work to do. Now, if you've got something that you're going after, like specifically, then and you're really motivated to get that thing, whether it's like a title or a job somewhere or whatever, that's great. But more and more, I just veer towards like the thing that I'm actually deriving meaning from in my life is my family, and especially with small children around. They're gonna value more time with their father than they are their father always grinding and always working. But at the same time, you have to provide. So there's no, I think a lot of people probably just arrive at a different balance that works for them, because it is a particularly individual thing. But that's just what works for me. So that's why, like, I try not to stream. Like, I was thinking about streaming last night, but it was late. I was tired. We had a busy weekend. And I thought, no, I'm not going to stream outside of work hours, because I'm technically refining my skill set here on stream, which we should actually go ahead and do. I've been just kind of rambling on for a bit here, but I thought it was all worth pointing out, because it's all relevant to what is actually being done here. But we have to actually go and do it. So there you go.
It's day 34. Day 40 will be the end of our first work week, and we have so much to show for it. We have features that even professional engines don't have. Looped live code editing is something you can't even buy today, and we've already written it. So I think there's a lot of good stuff going on here, and I would encourage people really to just have fun with it, and maybe don't worry so much about a lot of those other things. All right, that's my PSA for the day. I am done talking at you. It is time to do some programming, because we're at a pretty fun part of the project right now, if you ask me. All right. So if you are following along at home with the source code, today is day 34, so you want to unzip day 33 source code. If you have pre-ordered the game on handmadehero.org, you will have gotten a link in your email. You can click on that link, and it will have a zip file. Inside that zip file is one zip per day. You just go ahead and you find day33.zip, you unzip that into a directory, and you are exactly the same spot in the code base as I am right now, and so you can follow along at home exactly the same way that you see me do on the stream. Okay, so if you remember, we had just sort of finished virtualizing our tile map yesterday. What we had basically done is we're sort of making a scratch game right now. We're basically just sort of laying out what the sorts of things we want our game engine to do so that we can go write our game engine. And one of the things I did just before the end was I made it so that every time the player moved to a new tile, we moved the camera. Now that's not maybe so nice, because people would probably prefer some smooth scrolling there. So one thing that might be kind of fun to do would just be to go ahead and add the smooth scrolling. So why don't we just do that for now, because I feel like that's probably a pretty reasonable thing to do. You know what, one thing I haven't checked recently, by the way, I haven't checked to see whether we have any, I wanted to double check, because we had added some things at the end of the Win32 platform layer stuff. I want to do that Control-Shift-Escape to bring up the task manager, just make sure we're not doing anything weird with our memory. I want to make sure it always stays nice and constant, and it does. So that's always good. Anyway, we'll be adding a lot of features that allow us to track our debug stuff, probably not too long after we get sort of our renderer chops up a little bit. But anyway, so what I'd like to do is just go ahead and make this smooth scroll. Now, if you remember how this worked, we basically were drawing the tile map. We're drawing the tile map by starting at whatever tile the player is on, and then we're just asking what the tiles are that are around him, and we're drawing them. That's all we're doing. So instead of moving the player sprite like we're doing now, it's all relative, like Einstein said. Really all we have to do is we just have to move the map instead of the player, and then we'd have smooth scrolling, right? That's really all we'd have to do. Right now we're moving the player based on his offset, but all we have to do when we draw, instead of drawing the player sprite offset from the tile, we can just draw all the tiles, offset, and the player stays in the middle, right? Pretty darn simple, but I feel like that would just be a funny thing to do right now. People were asking about smooth scrolling, and I just thought it would be funny if we go ahead and do that for them. So let's just take a look.
As simple as it sounds, I couldn't go and just implement that myself, with him informing what we need to do, right? I couldn't just go and start writing that without it taking me a lot of time to think through it. But basically, what we've got going on here, right, is that, like you said, we're drawing out rectangles, which make up the tile map, all relative to the player's position. And now we're just going to move the camera relative to the player. So instead of it being relative to like a specific tile that the player is on, we're going to be going off of all of the tile map around the player in the dimensions of the frame buffer that we care about.
How simple that would be. Again, we will not really be doing smooth scrolling in the game because I don't super like that feel of the game. I like walking from screen to screen, but I just wanted to make sure everyone would be aware that the engine could support either one, and we're not actually cutting any corners there. It's just something that I don't think is particularly interesting. So in here, we do our drawing with our center X, center Y, right? And basically all of the tiles when we draw them are based off of that center X, center Y. So if we wanted to, we could just go ahead and add the player's offset in here. So right now you can see the player's offset is being used to offset their position, right? Right here. We can just go ahead, if we want to, and make that offset the world's position the opposite direction, right? So instead of adding that in here, I will just subtract it from where we're drawing the tiles, and instead of subtracting this in here, I will add it to where we're drawing the tiles, right? And that.
See, that's much easier than I would have imagined. I thought we were going to have to like calculate a new center X and Y. But now that I've been doing enough of this, you know, we might get to a point where I might start trying to work ahead of him more. It's just, it tends to bite me in the butt when I do it right now. So I'm still not quite there, but I feel like I am getting there slowly but surely. So let's see, instead of, well, I think this operator here should be, it should stay on that line above it. But, so we're subtracting the offset of the player, which is this. I kind of want to calculate it to be its own thing, offset X, and then write it out that way so we don't have this really wide operation here with these pretty big names, but whatever. And we're just taking that all out of where the calculation for the player's left side is, which means this can collapse down into one line. And then same thing over here with the Y. And this gets added over here. So throw that in over there. Where did that come from? Minus plus. I'm not sure. One of these operators, I'm not sure where it came from, but we want to add that to the rel column times the world tile side in pixels. And so, yeah, so this is just saying the coordinates of where we're going to draw this rectangle in here that we draw over here. Our offset from the player. Okay. I think I'm following. This is going to be one that I'm going to have to kind of work through a couple times in my head after the stream to make sure that I actually understand what we're doing here, but I think that's fine. And then we subtract that out because the Y is going down as we go up on the screen, right? I think that makes sense to me.
That would be a pretty straightforward way, I believe, to make that happen. I believe. You know, don't quote me on this. But yeah, so there you go. That's smooth scrolling, right? That's the way you would normally...
And we'll see if I didn't screw something up here. I left... Oh. Okay, so we're adding this value, which is not right. Didn't clean that line up. Still not quite right. I've done something bad.
I see it in a game where the player was locked in the center and you scrolled around. Obviously, we could put logic in there for the camera about when you would actually do that scrolling.
His looks good, so this is where it actually feels good when I do something wrong, because then I in order to actually do it properly, then I have to look at my code and be like, okay, so what am I doing here? We're adding, while we're subtracting this conversion of the player's tile relative X and Y from the center X. Maybe this was a subtraction, but I thought he changed that. How do you change that to an addition? Yeah, it just seems like the player offset is a little wrong. This looks right down here. Yeah, player top goes up from center Y. Yeah, I think I did this right, but I clearly did something wrong here. So he does add to the center Y the player's tile relative Y, converting it out to pixels. Okay. I'm with him there. This looks the same, so I might have missed something else that he did. Or some other part of my code was just wrong this whole time. It just looks like I'm one tile over than where I should be. Almost. It looks like the Y is correct. Actually, so the X seems wrong. Yeah. Why is the X wrong? It's like I'm one tile over from where I should be. Could be related to that floating point stuff, but I don't know why it would be. Like this makes it seem as though, oh wow. Okay, so I'm going in the opposite direction, actually, with my movement controls. And it's definitely not smooth. So we're smoothly scrolling X, but not Y. Okay, yeah. Well, that's very wrong. Oh. Oh, okay. I think I understand now why that plus minus, where that came from. Okay, yeah. So we're getting closer. We fixed the X problem, but we still got this Y direction problem. Yeah, that makes sense. Again, if I back this up, I bet I can see. Yeah. So I took this subtract out, and I threw it up there. Probably can't see that. There was this subtraction up at the end of this line, of that player left line. And also, this was a subtract up here this whole time. Where did the, I guess, I really don't understand where that extra plus operator came from. If I go, yeah, right here, was it at the end here? Let's undo that one more time. Okay, that's what happened. So I threw it in before here, and my brain being on autopilot probably thought I was replacing it. Okay, let's see if this looks good now. So we're moving down correctly on the tile, but it's not taking us further up the screen like it should. But smooth scrolling to the left and right works. I've just got my that actually seems like the recanonicalization, as Casey would call it, is wrong. Because we're going down here, and then we wrap back up to the top of the tile in the opposite direction. So what's that about? X is good. I think this needs to be a subtract, right? Because we're going up as Y gets smaller. Yeah. There we go. Now we're doing a nice smooth scroll instead of that stuttery scroll. That took way too long, but you know what? Sometimes you gotta pay your dues and suck for a little bit.
I believe. You know, don't quote me on this, but yeah. So there you go. That's smooth scrolling, right? That's the way you would normally see it in a game where the player was locked in the center and you scrolled around. Obviously, we could put logic in there for the camera about when you would actually do that scrolling if we wanted to make it so that you only scrolled when you hit the end. But these are things, like I said, we're not really doing for this game. So I just wanted to show how simple that was to conceptualize. So at this point, we sort of have to start thinking about some other things here. First of all, we've never really tested out our virtual tile system or any of that stuff. We've never tested a bunch of the things that we implemented yesterday. So one thing that we might want to do is start to think about making like a much bigger world and making some way that we can actually sort of zoom out and see like a large part of the world or something like this. I'm not sure how we want to do that exactly. I'll have to think about it. I also want to take a look at the to-dos in the code base right now just to see what they were, just to see where we're at on the stuff that we have to figure out on the tile system. All right. Let's take a look. So we've got player movement code, which we'll be doing a little bit later. We started using the tile-sided meters. That to-do is done. Let's see. We've got to do some work on our floating point math in here. That's going to be a problem.
Yes, so that was like a big 20-minute, maybe even a half-hour-long conversation on Friday, was this right here. I actually started tripping this assert. For whatever reason, I was not tripping it for as long as that code had been in there. And then something changed. I was able to get it to trip again. What is it? That's for the, yeah, the tile relative. So it basically rounds out to 60. And to be fair, when I was seeing that assert trip, it was when I had the player delta X and Y cranked up. So maybe I can't trip it with the slower movement speed we've got penciled in right now, but so I think the same problem that Casey was seeing, we are definitely also seeing by using math.floor. And, you know, I've tried looking at this multiple times and going, you know, is this doing what I think it's doing? It seems like it is, or what I thought it was doing originally, which is that you can see we have this check here to where if X is less than 0, we're pulling the, I'm not sure what D is, but the fractional value out. I don't know what this mod F does. Like modulo? Is that what that's doing? Anyway, if I spent a serious amount of time looking at this, I might be able to determine whether it's actually doing what I think it's doing. But I swear I saw this assert get tripped, so I feel like the problems we were talking about with math.floor are also... They are in there the way they are in Casey's code, where when you try to truncate towards negative infinity, and actually, to be fair, I don't know that this is actually the bug that is tripping it for him. I'm gonna have to go and actually do the math out, but we learned some things about how you can't just expect a floor and then a conversion to an int to do what you might intuitively expect it to do, and I don't think there's any point in belaboring that. But the other thing was that he got rid of a to-do. What was that for? I forget what he said. Yeah, tile side and meters. I might have already wiped that out. Side in. Yeah, I think I already wiped that out, so we're good.
A little bit later, we started using the tile side and meters. That to-do is done.
What's the deal with logs and dot? Are you talking about inside of the Odin code? Or maybe I missed something. I'm not sure I know what you're referring to, Andrew. You let me know.
Let's see. We've got to do some work on our floating point math in here. That's going to be a problem. But that's about it for to-dos. Not a lot of to-dos left in our tile map system, so that's pretty cool. We did this switch that we said we were going to do, and so now we can just document this basically. These are fixed point tile locations. The top, let's see, the high bits are the tile chunk index, and the low bits are the tile index in the chunk, right? Just so we know what those are. And then we kind of said,
And we actually did do this, so we can go ahead and replace that. Actually, I'll just wipe all that out and say what he said. The high bits are the tile chunk index. that we care about. And the low bits are the tile index inside the chunk. And just the fact that it is just 2 members, I guess, helps me more easily make sense of the fact that this indexes the absolute tile X and Y that we care about inside of the whole world, right? That's why it's the world position. And then these are, okay, absolute tile X and Y gave us the exact spot in the entire game world that we care about for this given world position. Tile relative X and Y will give us the actual, fractional value into that tile that we're indexing into. And this way, we can have that massive world, right? Because this just gives us the tile, and then this number can be very, very big, and then this just gives us that nice and easy value into the tile. So we have like these whole numbers for a whole tile. I'm not sure how you would do this not in like a tile map sense. And he talks about this earlier where he's basically going over, like, if you didn't have an understanding of the geometry of the world where things are laid out in tiles and things were done this other way, like, I guess you wouldn't think about it in terms of tile X and Y, right? Like, you would just have like, what are the floating point coordinates of, instead of packing a tile index in here, we'd pack the tile relative X and Y in it. So instead of indexing into a particular tile where you could like map things and lock things to the tile, you just have the floating point coordinates that go into the chunk at any random location. And then, you could map things to the chunk. Like a thing could be a fixed width to the size of a chunk, but there's no understanding of a tile to relate things to. And the reason why that's consequential, and I'm trying to re-articulate what he's already said here a few times. The reason why that's consequential is that if the player doesn't have an understanding of the game world to where things operate in blocks, that's the thing about Minecraft that makes it so intuitive and easy to get, I think, right? Is that everything is just a voxel. Everything is a cube. So like, if you're looking at that cube or you're trying to place something on a cube, like, and it highlights the cube for you in Minecraft, right? So you can just, boom, put that block down, or you know exactly what block you're punching out. But if everything was just kind of if things weren't locked into that cube size, and related to the size of a cube, then it would be much harder for the player to kind of orient themselves in the world, is basically what he was driving at. And I think I can make pretty good sense of that now. Dots in logs when I'm running the program. I see what you're saying. So what's going on when I run the game, right, is we have the window into the game up in the top right. It's actually like set up to pop up on my monitor in the same place where you're seeing it, but I just have it so that OBS is yanking the game and always putting it on top, because sometimes I'm going back into my editor and I want to look at stuff, but I want to keep the game running. But what you're seeing with these log messages here is the milliseconds spent calculating each frame, and it's a pretty constant 13.89 milliseconds. The frames per second, we're locked in at 72 frames per second. And then over here, this more variable number that's actually changing on every frame is it the megacycles per frame or millicycles? We could actually go and look. But the ellipsis that you're seeing is that my editor is not printing out every single log. It's showing me an intermittent stream of logs, right? It doesn't constantly stream it because it's printing out so fast, and the editor is probably just abridging that because it doesn't see a point. There's probably a configuration somewhere where I could say never abridge the logs, never abridge the stream of logs coming back from the app, right? Just give it to me as a constant stream, and I don't care if it's moving really fast. But the effect that this is having, right, where it's abridging it, is that sometimes it stops, it pauses, and I can look at the values that are actually changing, because right now they're unintelligible until the stream pauses, and then I can see, and that's all that's going on there. But I can actually go into main here, and I can go to FPS, and it's just this variable is not named as well as it should be. I think this is megacycles though, because we're saying the total number of cycles elapsed, and then we're dividing it by, what does that come out to? 1 million, right? And a mega is 1 million, right? So I think that's what that is. But I think, like, basically, right, something like that. So it's the number of cycles that the CPU is running. And I'm somebody who actually knows more about CPUs and this kind of stuff is going to say that I'm saying all this wrong. But it's basically the amount of cycles used by the CPU to calculate each frame. And hopefully that makes sense.
Were we going to make these offsets from the center of a tile? I don't know. It kind of feels like we should make them.
And the point of me making that disclaimer about how I'm probably articulating this wrong is that I barely know what a cycle is, right? I just know what I know from having watched Casey talk about it on stream, and it basically comes down to it being a sort of unit of work used by the CPU.
Offsets from the center of a tile, because then there's really no bias. We don't kind of have this sort of concept of an upper corner or, you know, a left or right or anything like that. It's just the center is always the center. And it's the same whether you flip upside down or not. It's all the same. In that sense, it seems kind of compelling to make it be the offsets be from the center of the tile. But at the same time, if the offsets are from the center of the tile, I'm just trying to think about, so then we would just do a rounding operation, I suppose, to figure out which tile we were in. I don't know. It's tough to say. I guess maybe let's try making it from the center of the tile. Let's see what happens, and then we'll basically say whether or not we like that one way or the other. So we basically have a tile side in meters. We could change that tile side in meters to basically be a tile radius in meters, if you will, and we could sort of start to think about it as being measured this way. So we basically have a center position, and we've got, you know, a radius out to here, and that radius is the same in all directions. So that would basically be our it would be half what we were doing now. I think we said that tiles were 1.4 meters, and we.
Interesting. That's that editor. Yeah. So this is just something that NeoVim, which is the editor I'm using, is doing kind of by default. I didn't set it up to run that way. That's just the way it runs. But basically within my config for NeoVim, I've got these commands mapped to compile and then run the game that I'm working on, right? And so it's running that application, it's running that process from within the editor, and the editor is getting back logs from that application and then just feeding it to that buffer that I'm seeing. Now, if you've used something like VS Code before, it's basically the same thing. Like if you open like a terminal window inside of VS Code and then you go and run your thing, and then the logs are just coming back into that terminal, it's essentially the same thing. It's just that NeoVim is kind of doing something nice and that it's feeding me the logs back. There's probably a much smarter way to do it where I could run it inside of like a new window like this, right? And then I would run it inside of here, and then have the logs flowing in this buffer on the right instead of taking up, you know, the whole editor. Then I could have the logs running on this side, you know, of my editor, and then I could be making changes to the code in here. But obviously for the sake of, you know, the code being legible on stream, I'm all zoomed in here, so there's not a whole lot of real estate to work with. But yeah, I like it. I didn't even intend for that to work the way that it does. It just nicely works the way that I would imagine I'd want it to work. I don't know what else I would change about other than what I just said, right? Like having the stream from the application that I'm running from within the editor come back to a different buffer. But it's one of those things where like you can really rabbit hole on editor features and get obsessed with like the experience of writing code. And I've always tried to walk a fine line that hedges more towards actually writing code and less about obsessing over my editor, because there's no end to it, right? You could spend forever. And I've tried different editors. I tried Atom very briefly, and I think like right after I started using it, it got end of life anyway. And now they've got that new editor that the Atom guys have been working on called Zed or something like that. I used VS Code for like a solid 4 years, and then actually, before I tried either of those, was using just regular VI, like regular Vim for a bit, and then I had no idea what I was doing, so I kind of hit some walls with using Vim way back when I was in school, and then I got the itch to try something different again, and I went from using just plain VS Code to using VS Code with Vim bindings, and then from there I just started gradually moving more and more towards using Vim for everything, and I got tired of VS Code wants to show me all this stuff, right? And VS Code isn't unique in this way, but it's kind of like an IDE as much as it is an editor, right? You have all these different features. You've got like Git stuff in there, right, with version control integrated, all these different things. Not that Vim doesn't have plenty of plugins and all kinds of different stuff to make it kind of like its own IDE, but I just started going more in that Vim direction, and I've just kind of stuck with it. And now, like, I like that I don't have anything besides the text, right? Like, I don't even have line numbers, right? You just see I've got no line numbers here. I kind of wish I could like back this little indentation I have off, and I also wish I could shrink the name of the file I'm in, like this little bit of buffer here where the command space is. Like, there's just this kind of lost room that I have down at the bottom there. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the way that I've been going about things. Now I've been working this way in particular, using my editor set up this way, using NeoVim for, I don't even know, when did I start? Probably like back in January of this year, but I've been using Vim bindings for probably 2 or 3 years. I'm not obsessed. I'm just using Helix, which is like pre-configured NeoVim and running in console. Yeah, for sure. Sometimes you just got like something that, like, you know, some people will just use, at my day job, they just use PyCharm, you know, for doing any sort of code editing. So it's all really just preference and what gets you going to where you need to go the fastest. Yeah, the ellipses were, when I first saw it do that, I was kind of confused too. And then the more and more I use it, the more I realize, oh, it's just kind of abbreviating the log stream coming back. So that's all that is.
We're basically saying something like, okay, now if we divide that by 2, they'd be 0.7 meters in radius, right? So that was one thing we could do. Someone also suggested that they liked the idea of having of a nice 1 meter, a nice unit measure. One thing we could think about doing is making the tiles be 2 meters long. If the tiles were 2 meters long, the radius would be 1 meter. I don't know if that's a compelling thing. Hard to say. But it is something to think about. So that's another thing we could try. So I don't know. I don't have a strong feeling today. I'm not sure what the best stuff to do is here. So I think maybe I will just go ahead. I will just go ahead and say, yeah, let's do it from the center. I don't know. I think this is the case where I just got to do an experiment here and see whether I like it better or not. I don't really know. And so if we have our recanonicalized coordinates, basically this is the place where it's going to affect things. This tile relative x, tile relative y is going to take on a little bit of a different meaning. If now what we basically say is, okay, this is the center, so the time that we need to offset where our tile actually was is just going to be about how far we are from that center. And when that distance gets larger than the tile radius, then we will go ahead and update it. So let's take a look here. We're saying the world is assumed to be toroidal topology. If you step off one and you come back on the other, oh, you know what? Maybe I can think of a reason why you wouldn't want this. Maybe I can. You know what? Can I? No, I can't really. I don't think I can. I almost did. I was thinking maybe that there is a reason not to do it. So let's take a look. I'm going to take a look at what happens when we do this. All right, so if we basically said here is where our center point is on the number line. We're at the center of the tile. And that's right on a numeric boundary, all right? That's 0. And so then we have some number crossing where basically if we go over that crossing, right now it would be 1.4. This would be negative 1.4. This would be positive 1.4. When we do the divide out by 1.4, what we would get is essentially we would normalize this down to a negative 1, positive 1, right? And here's our 0. And we've got, you know, our vector here. What we would then do, I guess, is instead of doing the flooring, we would just do a rounding function, right? Because we just want to know the closest whole number. Because remember, we're talking about the tile. We've got an offset from the center of the tile, and now we want to renormalize one of our coordinates. If it was pointing outside the tile, we basically just want to find out where the nearest whole number was, and then we're going to make it an offset from that, right? So we're just talking about a rounding operation now. We just need to basically do a rounding operation. So how do we want to do, how do we do that rounding operation? And the other question too is the rounding operation that we would have to do. We also have the question of how do we support that rounding operation in float? Because we're going to have to handle negative numbers now. I don't remember if we handled negative numbers in our rounding, probably not. So basically the way we were doing rounding before is we were basically just adding 0.5 and then truncating. So basically, we had the truncation. The truncation goes towards 0, right, depending on the circumstance. And so basically, we would have to change the direction that we added in order to do the rounding when we get to 0. We'd have to make it flip, right? Because what we were doing before for rounding, I don't know if you remember when I said this, basically for rounding, we had something where we would take, the 0.5, right? And we wanted anyone who was in this part to round up and anyone who was in this part to round down. So what we did is we just added 0.5 and then truncated. So that would push people in the upper quadrant over here, and then the truncation would knock them back down, and people here would knock up as well, but they would not pass the next whole number, so they would come back down. If we have negative numbers, unfortunately, I believe, since the rounding direction flips, the truncation direction flips, we would technically want to be subtracting 0.5 if we wanted to round properly. And so we didn't actually implement that. Again, we have not actually written that in our intrinsics. Right, all we did was this, which will only work for positive numbers. So we'd basically be in another circumstance where we'd have to lean on math.h. I believe we can use.
So, kind of speaking to the thing that we were dealing with on Friday, but it's just a hair bit different because he's talking about rounding now, which I think means that we get to ditch this floor, but we'll let him keep going.
Use the round function there. Let's see, CRT round, or I should say round F, I believe. I don't actually remember if they actually have one of these. Let's take a look. Although we could also just keep using floor.
Yeah, let him cook. That's the expression now. I don't know where that expression came from. Is it like a Gordon Ramsay thing? I really don't know, but that's what everybody says now, so we'll let him cook.
And do the bias on floor as well. So let's see what we actually have. Yeah, so there is a round F. I don't know why it wasn't getting found. So round F is what we would be doing. And so really, yeah, I think this basically ends up being exactly the same thing. And we're still, this is our intrinsic stuff is basically going to have to re-implement these functions. Now, they will actually get we did see that when we turn on intrinsics and FP fast in our build line, I don't know if you remember this from one of the Q&As, if we turn on O2, OI, FP fast, we don't actually call the C runtime library for these, I think, in a lot of circumstances. And so technically, we wouldn't probably have to re-implement these ourselves. The compiler would do them for us, but we might as well learn how to implement them anyway. So eventually, we'll get around to that as well. All right. So I believe all we really want to do here is make sure that these things round properly. The truncation's there, sine and cosine. So we are basically calling this the runtime library for these sorts of things, and this will be our to-do to convert these to our own at some point in the future. Okay. What are we complaining about? Oh, we have an extra parentheses. There we go. So if I want to do that, and I don't know if anyone actually uses that right now. Okay, there are some people who use it for the rectangle drawing routine. So I'll double check to make sure that they still work properly, but I believe that they do.
And I don't think any of that impacts anything that we've done because we do call round, but it's just Odin's own rounding proc. Now, there could be something to be said for the fact that we're doing a round and then a cast, but I don't have Mr. Intrinsic here to inform me if, doing things this way is inappropriate. I think the main concern was with flooring, not rounding, to where, when we're dealing with rounding to negative infinity, flooring and then casting specifically seem to be the problem. It's just the use of a floor proc, so I'm not too worried about it.
Let's go ahead and make sure that there's no weirdness there. Yeah, everything's fine there. So if I want to go ahead and make this change to do it on the center point, basically all I'm going to need to do now is I'm going to have to say, all right, we're going to take whatever that tile relative thing is divided by the tile radius in meters. Let's see here. And so you can kind of see, in some sense, you can kind of see what I'm a little concerned about. In fact, this was the thing that I sort of said in my head, and maybe as I'm starting to implement it, I'm thinking that maybe I was right to be wary of it. But basically, here's the part that I'm a little concerned about. So the only thing that I'm wondering is if we do it from the center point, so this is the center point of a tile, right? And then I'm dividing by the radius, which is half the length, because this is the point at which it crosses over. Well, no, I guess I can still just divide. No. Okay, I'm thinking about it wrong. I can still divide. I don't need to divide by the radius. I can still divide by the tile size, the tile side in meters, and do the exact same math, because the rounding is the thing that makes the change, right? Round real 32 to int 32 is what will make the change for me, because basically what will happen is if I go half the distance, which is the radius, the rounding will push me to the next center point. So I really don't need to think about the radius at all. I can really just use the tile side in meters again. It's really just a question of how I do the snapping. That's kind of nice how that worked out. I don't know if you guys saw that.
I'm going to trust him. That sounds fine to me, which means that, we don't have to use this radius value that he's talking about adding. I can just call round here, and then we'll go off towards whatever direction, we're closest to. Regardless of where the fraction is, it'll round to where we need it to go to, I think.
Hopefully that makes sense. But basically, I was thinking I was going to have to do something different with like the fact that you only go halfway and then you have to go a full one to get to the next one. But the rounding basically, I think, takes care of that. So I think if we do that rounding, I think we're all good. Can't think of any particular reason why anything else changes here. Does anything else change? Pretty much just our assertions change. We basically have to make sure that we're...
I guess I want to go back and look at the changes he made to his own round so that I can understand really what the difference is from the way it was working before. Yeah, because he was adding 0.5 to it before, and then he changes it to just no longer add 0.5 before doing the round. And I guess that's just because of the way that he's using round in this context now, to where we're just going off to the nearest tile versus trying to go back to like the beginning, I suppose, rounding towards negative infinity, flooring, right? Okay. And it just changes the details of these
asserts. So I think if we do that rounding, I think we're all good. Can't think of any particular reason why anything else changes here. Does anything else change? Pretty much just our assertions change. We basically have to make sure that we're bounded on either side by the radius now, which is this way, like that. But I think that might be all that changes.
Okay. That seems straightforward enough to me, which means that these can remain greater than or equal to, I guess, because we want to just be on the bounds of, like you said, a radius of a tile. And then I think that this means that this to-do can go away.
I don't know. So I'm gonna say that. So I think that just works. Does it just work? So I just divide by the tile side of meters.
So it looks like he still wants it to be bounded this way, because we should never be able to round to the actual value that is the radius of a tile side of meters. So we're changing this to be less than, or say, can we fix floating point math so this can be less than? Okay.
Around, that gives me my offset. I do the offset on there. I subtract however many I went, which seems totally fine. Yeah, I don't know. Gosh, that seems a lot too simple, doesn't it, people? I'm a little nervous about the fact that I'm forgetting something or missing something, but that seems pretty simple. So if that was the entirety of the change, then really, I think the only difference here would be how we draw the offset of the guy in terms of the fact that now that it's from the center instead of from, instead of from, excuse me, yeah, it's the center instead of from the corner. So let's take a look at how we were drawing this here. Center x minus world meters to pixels, game state player p tile relative x, plus rel column. So basically the problem now is when we're drawing these, this is the min x and the min y, but now this is technically the center x and the center y, if that makes sense. Because we're basing it around the player, and that relative offset is the center. So really all we need to do is we basically just need to take a little bit of a step there and make this be, I should probably pick a different name for center x. This is actually screen center x. Would make a little more sense so that we know what we're talking about here. So screen center x, screen center y. And so really all I need to do is say, well, okay, now we're computing the center because this tile relative x, tile relative y, those are the relative positions of the guy from the center of a tile. So if we want to draw the tile around them, we have to basically take the center and subtract half the tile radius from that, if that makes sense. So I will go ahead and do that. Of course, we're passing the min x and the max x inverted now, which I guess We don't even really have to do that. We could just go ahead and normalize these things as well. Senwy minus 0.5 times world tiles and side in pixels, like that. And I think
Oh my gosh. Thank you for that call out. I don't know what happened. I left myself on mute. Pausing the video does not seem to mute me. I just mute myself and then, you know, I stop paying attention. It's been like 5 minutes. Yeah, I know. It's okay. I haven't said anything important. I've just been trying to figure out which direction Y goes in this whole time. So that's all you've missed me blabbering on about. But the point is, like, if I go back here, what I was talking about here is I was going back and forth about the which direction Y, min Y and max Y should be in. Because before, Casey swapped the min Y and max Y that he passes to draw a rectangle here. And if we were to do that here, these would need to be swapped like this, right? Because we're saying min Y is the center that we've calculated relative to the screen center for the tile. We're getting to the tile relative center X and Y. And we want to say, you know, we are where's the min Y value? In my head, I was thinking, oh, min Y is lower on the screen, but it's relative to where we're actually drawing the rectangle. And it would be like this if we kept passing in min Y and max Y reversed. But he kind of saw that and changed it to just be like, let's calculate the min Y, pass it into what it actually maps to in the proc name. That's all you miss me going on about. But I know I shouldn't leave myself on mute. I got to stop doing that. What I wish I had was like a light. You know, I need a light to tell me because then I just start getting into my train of thought where I want to go do the thing and I forget to unmute myself. I gotta stop doing that. Okay. And then what I was saying right before I caught that I was still muted was that, you know, we're hitting this assertion that we just changed over here, and I'm wondering if Casey is going to hit it too. If not, if he doesn't hit it, that means I've screwed something up badly. If he does hit it, then we're in good company.
I think that is mostly all we would need to do. I'm not sure. Again, I'm just kind of slapping that down there. Oh my goodness. Well, that's no good. What did I? Oh, whoops. This doesn't need to be half at all. Well, it could be. We could just base it off the center. That's what you would do for that. But
Okay, so, well, we'll see if his runs, because what he did, right, is he forgot to change these values. Let me make sure that I actually wrote that in, now that I think about it. So yeah, we're calculating the center, X and Y. Well, we're calculating the bounds of the rectangle relative to the center of the tile. That's what all this is doing. It looks the same. I might be in trouble here.
Doesn't need to be half at all. Well, it could be. We could just base it off the center. That's what you would do for that. But yeah, I don't know if you saw what happened there. Is I changed the computation as if it was always going to base off the center, but then I was still using the min and the max. Not very good there. All right. So let's see.
Yeah, we're in trouble. Well, what on earth did I do? It could just be that the round implementation that I chose is not the way to go. Using this round call here. Was this supposed to be a negative? Yeah, I think that's all that was. I'm glad I didn't have to actually scroll back into his code. But I want to make sure. I want to go, where was he implementing that? Right here. Yep, he made it a negative. So that, I'm glad I had the intuition to figure out just by looking at this code what was going on right there, right? So we were calculating within the bounds of the tile, right? To make sure that tile relative is a good value, and I just hadn't made this value negative, which meant that we were basically, there's no distance between these two, right? It means that the relative tile value has to be equal to the radius of the tile, and we have to be like right on the edge of the next tile, which is obviously no good. And now I can't play him. There we go.
So I think that just works. Does it just work?
Actually, I need to fast forward now back to where it was. Hold on. Here we go.
So let's see.
Hey, Leprechaun, welcome to the stream.
Seems pretty good. Does that look good to you guys? It looks good to me. Looks like it's working to me. He seems to move the tile that he's on. His active tile moves every time we do that. So yeah, that seems pretty good. So maybe,
I guess I should make sure that I can actually move across chunks here. Once again, I'm feeling the urge to crank up the movement speed. Just go diagonal so we move a little bit faster. Looks like we can do it. We can make a loop right around the map here without issue. We're doing it. We're doing the thing.
now would be a good time to start thinking about, and I guess now that I think about it, I'm going to have to, maybe I'll have to have a key here, maybe the space bar or something like that, or one of the buttons. I think to speed this guy up so I can walk around the world a little faster. He's pretty slow for debug purposes. I don't know if, depending on how the game works out, maybe that won't be too slow for the game, but I probably want to have a key that allows me to scoot around the world just a little faster. So what I'm thinking about here is perhaps we just have a little thing temporarily. Again, the player movement code is really just not something I want to talk about yet, because we're going to talk about that a lot. But what I could do is basically say that there's a player speed, and we'll go ahead and make that player speed be based off one of those keys. So I know in here, I basically said that those key down messages, right? We were processing the key down messages, and I think I added some extra ones, right? We've got VK space, and that was the back button. We've got the different buttons here, up, left. So maybe when I push up, I'll have them go really fast. So I'll just say whenever the up button is down, right? And I don't remember that's action up. I will just go ahead, oops, didn't mean to move that in there. I will just go ahead and make the player speed be quite a bit more than it was, right? And so now when he moves around, if I want to, he can go into acceleration mode, and that's fine. You can see, I don't know if you can see this too, when we get to the player movement code, I'm going to talk about this a lot, but you can already see now why it's so important to do good player movement code, because like, you see how we get stuck on things and stuff? That just feels awful when and games have this problem a lot of times, especially if they're not done by people with a lot of experience, they'll have these sorts of problems.
I did that thing wrong. What he's about to start talking about, though, is heavily relevant to why I'm even bothering to work through as much of this series as I can manage to before the urge to go in my own direction becomes too strong and experiment and mess with things. You don't know what you don't know, and it turns out there's a lot of formulas and approaches of doing things that are already well established, especially for things like collision detection or different kinds of like lighting and rendering or whatever, that I'm not just going to divine those things myself by experimenting. Of course, I could go and research and learn from papers and stuff when there's a specific thing that I need to do, but he kind of works through a lot of those things and shows you, this is how you would do this is how you would do that. And why not go and follow, you know, a path that he's already carved through the jungle, so that I don't have to kind of meander and then starve and and never escape the jungle. Why not just follow the already well-beaten and well-trodden path? And also, the other thing that I'm noticing, the more I do this, I'm reading about a lot of other people that have already been here and done this. I tried to find other people, other examples of people posting Handmade Hero code in Odin, or really just any other Handmade Hero code in general on the internet. And there's a few, like there's a guy who's deep into it with the Zig programming language, but there's a bunch of people who are actually like members of the Odin Discord that have already done this and gotten like deep into day, 200 something. So I know it's another thing that people have taken it upon themselves to do. They might have different goals from mine, but at the end of the day, they're all learning some pretty awesome stuff by digging into this series. So this, I don't know why I started trying to calculate the player delta X and Y in here. So basically, like he was saying, we modify the player speed. I don't even know what he set it to, like 10 or something like that, so that we can move faster if I'm holding down, like, what is that, the up arrow key. And then this is wrong because we want this to be an F32, I'm guessing. I don't know what the most idiomatic Odin way is. If this isn't the way to declare an F32, maybe I should just cast it so that I can use my nice colon equals operator. Maybe that's the more Odin-esque way to do it, but honestly, it probably doesn't even matter. What did he change it to?
It'd be quite a bit more.
Yeah.
Do good player movement code, because like you see how we get stuck on things and stuff. If that just feels awful when games have this problem a lot of times, especially if they're not done by people with a lot of experience, they'll have these sorts of problems. And so one of the things that's kind of nice is when we do the player movement code, we'll be talking a lot about how to not have that kind of stickiness. Like you want to be able to aim for a door and just go right through it. So that'll be fun code to write when we get down there, because there's a lot of interesting things to talk about in there. Anyway, so what I want to do now is I want to kind of get this world situation a little more straightened out.
So like I was just saying this earlier in the stream, right? Like I want to just keep it at like a static 10, but now I can just easily drop in this code here like he does, and now we can control, like when I just want to test, like, can I get around the tile map without it breaking things? And now I can move nice and quick through everything to make sure that I didn't break the tile map addressing.
Let's go ahead and say that we're going to do a much larger world. Let's try to put a much larger world in there now so we can just sort of test the systems, make everything's kosher and nothing weird is going on. So what I want to do is I want to go in and say that instead of this hand-coded tile map like we had before, let's start thinking about making something that's going to be more procedural. And so let's just go ahead and add some very basic things to our tile map system. I'm relatively happy at the moment with the way that we're sort of doing the tile map thing, so I think I might start to pull that out a little bit into its own file. I'm thinking that maybe it's a good time to start doing that. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm leaning towards it, so I think I might start doing that. I'm gonna make sort of a handmade tile maybe .h, which will start to contain this stuff. And I'm going to go ahead and say that now that I'm relatively happy with it, that we're kind of have some of this stuff will kind of go in here. And I'm going to pull this thing out to basically be, I don't know what we're going to call this yet. Maybe we'll call this, maybe this, well, you know what? It's just, this is the tile map. This is the map. It's the whole map. So maybe we'll just call that the tile map for now. And that will have all of our tile chunks in it. It'll have this stuff in here. There we go. It will kind of probably...
This is exactly why I didn't want to start messing with names too much, because he just keeps iterating on this to get it into a better and better place, which is often how it tends to go down, at least for me. I rarely write something that I'm very happy with at first. I have to write something that sucks about 3 to 5 times, and then I arrive at an API that actually looks pretty good. So I've never had to actually do this before, but we're in a package in Odin that is our game package, and I'm just going to do what he's doing for now and call it tile.odin. But it's still going to be a part of the game package. And I think all I need to do, if I can edit code properly is go into my main and then start pulling this stuff out, and then the game package will know where everything is at. And maybe I should be splitting this up like this, just so I'm blocking less of the code. But I can start pulling things out and just drop them in here, and I'm pretty sure I'll be able to see them just fine, even though they won't be local to that file, just because of the way that Odin packages work. So I guess I can try just doing that and not changing anything. Oh, redeclaration. Well, it knows that it can see this other one. Well, it's because I haven't saved this. Now we're good. Now I think this just works, even though they're in 2 different files. So there's that. And that's a pretty big difference from how I was doing things in Zig, but I think it's fine. I think I like it better, honestly, because I was starting to get pretty... It was getting very tedious, because in Zig I would have to, like, you know, say this is a new module. This is a tile module, we'll call it. When I have to start bringing all that stuff into other files, I'd have to do... I think it's like, you know, const tile equals, and then it would be like, I can't remember what it is. I think it's like import, you know, tile.zig or something like this is what it would look like in Zig. And then I'd have to, you know, access every function call that I've defined inside of that module off of this. This is basically a handle to the module. And that got pretty tedious, especially moving things around a lot. And I think it, you know, I've thought about this a lot because I knew that this was going to look different going into Odin. I thought about this a lot. It just seems like this will be nicer because everything is in the game package. Everything can see everything. And that's actually more C-like, you know, as I understand it. So what my old mentor would say, he's not my old mentor. He's still my mentor. He's just old. That's a dig at him, but he's not watching the stream, so I'm safe. But he would say that it's, and I don't think this is like an original quote by him by any means, but he would say, you know, it's an abuse of namespaces when you have every single file is its own module, and now you're trying to like wrangle the fact that all these different pieces of functionality, you're trying to like define boundaries across these modules, and it just doesn't work that well. It becomes a mess of everything is including everything else, and that's one thing that Odin discourages heavily. In fact, it's impossible. You can't import the same dependency twice across packages in Odin. And that does create other problems, but at least for working on your own code, I think I'm excited to go in this direction. Yeah, exactly. It's a sprint button. That's what we implemented. I don't know why. It just didn't click. It's so weird because when you get deeper into the thought process of like I'm making a game versus programming. Well, you got to program the game. Like, at what point are you thinking of things in terms of like we implemented a sprint mechanic. It's a pretty dumb sprint mechanic, but that is what we did, and it just didn't. The light bulb didn't go off for me to say that's what we did. We implemented sprint, and I don't even know that he calls it that. But anyway, okay. So he pulled out I pulled out the thread context, which I did not mean to do. I thought I was pulling out something tile related there. So let's get that back into the game package, or I guess the main file of the game package. And then he pulls out the position, the tile chunk position. Drop that up there, and then the tile map. I think he was calling it a tile chunk. Well, isn't that what that is? No. Where did that come from? Where is this sparseness comment in the game code? Whoops, we have multiple files in game now, in the game directory. Sparseness. I see. He's pulling this stuff out of the world to be in its own tile map struct. Tile side and pixels is still part of the world, but tile chunk goes into its own thing called tile map. So tile map is reintroduced here. I did not remember that.
in fact, all of this stuff that was in world, really this is going to be world, but world will have a tile map because the world will have other things in it, right? Because the world will have, you know.
I see, he moves it all over. Okay. Throw that up there, and then, well, this is not a tile chunk. This is still, was that an F32? The chunk count X and Y, no, those are ints. So, like that. And then inside of the world, we have our nice big tile map of tiles. I think that's good. That's going to break some stuff that we have to change because now we're using the world's tile map member, but that's okay.
And it can just include it directly. The world will have actual, excuse me, the world will have actual things in it, like the entities and stuff as well. So it'll have the tile map, but it'll also have the rest of the stuff as well. Do I want that to be a pointer? Maybe I do. We'll go ahead and make that a pointer. I'm not sure yet.
Sure.
Okay, so
It's a
now
pointer.
that we have one of these, what I want to do is I want to move the functions over out into here that we were using. So I'm going to go ahead and say that we have a bunch of stuff like the get tile value and these sorts of things. There's our draw rectangle call. We're not going to touch that. Get this out here. So this will come in. Oops, that was the CPP file. My bad. Let's paste that into the H file where it belongs. So the CPP file will have those get.
Make sure I'm not missing anything here. I don't know how much it really matters. Technically, I don't even need to do any of these things that he's doing, but if we're trying to create more of like a locally scoped thing, a file that's scoped to the thing that we care about, that we want to work on, it can kind of help you maybe orient the structure of the entire code base a bit, so you always know like which file to jump to if you know there's a specific thing you're working on, whether it's, you know, the entity system or you know, the world code, that sort of thing. But I was watching, I think it was like a retrospective that Carl Zielinski did on his Cat and Onion game that he made, which I still need to buy. I need to go buy it and play it because that game is made entirely in Odin using Raylib bindings in Odin. And he said that he wished he had actually done a better job of splitting the code out into multiple files, because he had like a 10,000 line file, or maybe it was a good deal more than that, I'm not sure, but he found himself wishing that he had done a better job structuring the code as time went on. So once again, these names, and I don't have H files in Odin, so everything is just going to go in tile.odin. But we have our get tile chunk, which I think is the same as what he has, but then get tile value and check, that's actually probably the same. And then get tile value, I think I have, do I have two tile, get tile value? Yeah, so he has that overloaded get tile value function, but what we have is get chunk tile and get tile chunk, or is it get world chunk? Get chunk tile. It's get tile chunk and get chunk tile. And he's going to have to pull both of those in. So we'll rip that. And then chunk tile comes out, right? No. Get tile chunk is this one. That's the one I care about. I want to think about this very carefully so I don't really screw something up. It's so easy to just royally get stuck on something dumb just because you're moving code around. And I tend to get a bit OCD about making sure I'm moving the right thing over. Did I just redeclare that? Did I not delete that out? Get tile chunk. Yeah, no, that's good. So get chunk tile is still in there. But this actually is that proc that we care about. And actually, something else that just occurred to me that I thought of and I wanted to change. So this maps over to his get tile value procedure just fine. But I wanted to turn this into the result. To be very explicit about the fact that that is the thing we're returning. Not that you can't see it just by looking at the code, but even so.
Tile chunk calls in there.
OMG is a Turkish coding. Write something Turkish. I'm not Turkish. I don't know if you think you're hearing an accent that is not there, but I'm definitely not Turkish.
And these for now, I don't know. I think those will probably stay in line for now. Let's see, recanonicalize position, get chunk position 4. That's something that's based on the tile map, certainly.
Get chunk. I think that's what this is, right? No, that's not what that is. Did I just call it get chunk position 4? I feel like I didn't. Well, first of all, I'm in the wrong file. Chunk position. I just call it get chunk position. Okay. That's fine.
The tile value and his world point empty, those are certainly in there as well. And then there's a question about the coordinates and who manages those. I'm not sure exactly who that should be. I really don't know. Is this a world position technically, or is this a tile map position? It's kind of a tile map position when you think about it, because it's based on the tile map structure. So I don't know if that should go in there or not. Again, these are kind of questions that I don't know that we really need to answer all that definitively, but I might go ahead and say that that's a tile map position, and that's going to be our final name for that. It's a position on the tile map. Yeah, that seems kind of reasonable.
I feel like I liked world position better, but fine. Pull that out. And keep going into the wrong file. I might have to actually start paying attention when I use, what is that plugin? Telescope? To go and jump to a file. I don't want to. Yeah, and then whatever. We'll just stick to what he's doing. Your dad moved to Turkey? That is wild.
So maybe we'll call it that. Those are tile map positions, and then we will go ahead and call this a tile map position, like that. And
aren't you in like Georgia or something? I was pretty sure you were somewhere back east.
I will go ahead and say in here. Then we will put the canonicalized coordinate, and then we will go ahead and call this. So it's a position on the tile map. Yeah, that seems kind of reasonable. So maybe we'll call it that. Those are tile map positions, and then we will go ahead and call this a tile map position, like that. And I will go ahead and say in.
Okay, so on the game state, right? Game main. Oh, wow. I just realized that if I want to get into a file, I can't do // on Windows. I'm going to have to do \\. Okay. Well, I never really use slashes, do I? I just kind of do, yeah, that's what I do. Game tile, game main, that's fine. Okay. And then where did player P go? That's right, I cannot. I don't know why the language server won't work on the game states members. That's strange. That is now a tile map position, and I mean, how many other times do we talk about a world position in here? We're gonna have to change all of those. Here, then we will put the canonicalized coordinates. We will go ahead and put those in here. Now we could also go ahead, another thing we could do is split these out into their own file as well, which is basically coordinate-oriented stuff, but I don't know if that's necessary quite yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do that much for now, and we will see what we want to do with that. Okay, so all of the canonicalization stuff, which is just these two, right? And did he not? I guess he didn't move the get world tile function out, but maybe he will. Where did he throw those? He threw those in at the top. Not that it matters. That looks good. Going forwards. All right.
So let's go ahead and make sure that those are all included in here. Make sure that that all works, and then we will go ahead and why do I not have tile map? That's in handmade.h. That's the problem. So handmade.h. This stuff should be probably how I want to do this. See, handmade.h has these things, so I probably want one more h file. Handmade.h is kind of our
Virginia. Is Ameribucks go a long way there? Yeah, that was gonna be my next question, or that was gonna be my first question, because that is like a thing that I know a lot of people, who've made a good amount of money. Not even like if they're native born in the States, but a lot of people will come up here, make money doing literally anything, and then like even a job that, as far as Americans are concerned, pays, a pittance, would go quite a long ways back in like El Salvador, which is exactly what this one waiter who I know at a local restaurant here has done, and he's like actually about to retire in his home country. What is your family from? Turkey? That was gonna be my second question. Because like, why Turkey specifically? There would be like a thing that draws you. For me, I have family in Peru, so that might be one country that I would consider. But I would not want to live in Peru, no matter how much cheaper it may be. I can think of a couple European countries, but the cost of living would all be, approximately the same with the States. So it's kind of like, I might as well just stay stateside. They're from Russia. Have no idea why he went to Turkey. Well, I mean, Turkey is kind of in that neck of the woods. Kind of not really, I guess. I know you're going to laugh and be like, dude, it's like 1,000 miles away or whatever. But like, it's over there. Where's east? Where the hell am I? That's south. Right in front of me is south. And that means that's west, right? No, that's north. Behind me is east. So it's way back east. Encryptoid Galactic, welcome. Yes, I am attempting to remake Handmade Hero in Odin, which, I'm definitely not the first, but I think I'm the first to try it on stream. Not that that's even like a trend that's happening. I don't know. Maybe somebody else has tried streaming Handmade Hero, doing their own Handmade Hero in whatever language, but it's such a bizarre thing to even try to do that I can see why nobody else would even attempt it. But yes, that is what I'm attempting to do. I'm glad you think so, Galactic, because I was really unsure about whether anybody would think this was interesting or really stupid or almost like I'm stealing valor from Casey. I got in my own head about it. I had this idea to do this and stream this for months. Going as far back as when I was a few months deep into doing Handmade Hero and Zig. I had gotten to like the first, 20 days or whatever, and I was like, man, what if I just streamed myself working on Handmade Hero and Zig? And then I didn't do it. I also had a new baby coming, and I didn't want to like conflate all these different, things that I had to think about when trying to get a stream operational with the fact that I also had a newborn coming. So I kind of meandered for a bit and was still thinking, this sounds like it would actually be a fun thing to do on stream. And then I discovered Odin. I rediscovered Odin, I guess. I gave Odin a shot, and I was like, man, this is giving me, I feel like I want to stream working on Handmade Hero and Odin, and here we are. I finally decided to go through with it, despite all the negative thoughts, like, oh, people are going to think this is really dumb and lame or whatever. But congrats on the baby. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, he's doing great. He's going to be 4 months old in a few days. His name is Levi, and he's awesome. He's already grown like half a foot, which is awesome. First person to remake Handmade Hero in Odin on stream award goes to, yeah, right, like who, as if such an award would exist. I don't know. I'm enjoying myself, which I think is really the point. And I feel like I am learning things on stream that I wouldn't necessarily take the time to concentrate on if I was just blowing through the code, on my own off stream. So there you go. Anyway, so what was I in the middle of doing? I just added these canonicalization procs back in over onto the tile side. We're going to have to change the way we're accessing all this tile map stuff. And that's going to be a bit of a bear, but
our basic stuff. If
Casey
you will.
did it,
Well,
so
you know,
so
it doesn't
can
really
we.
matter how I do this for now. So I think maybe what I'll do is I'll just do it this way. There we go. We could deal with that a little later on. All right, so now tile. Basically,
I was looking right at what he was doing while he was doing it, and my brain just did not record any of that.
So I think maybe what I'll do is I'll just do it this way. There we go.
So he's moving the inclusion of the intrinsics and tile headers into the H file for the whole Handmade project. I don't think I care about any of that.
We can deal with that a little later on. All right, so now basically world becomes tile map. So basically world becomes tile map everywhere, I guess. Actually, I should say world becomes tile map everywhere. So let's go ahead and make...
Okay. Wanted to make sure he wasn't about to change his mind. I feel like it definitely landed on world position, but whatever. Let's go to the game's main file, the game package's main file, and just do that. Sub out world position with tile map position. Do that globally, and we're gonna need to do the same thing for everywhere we're accessing off of the world directly. We just need to throw a tile map at the end of it. Unless, of course, he changes it again. But we have the power. We'll change it as many times as Casey ordains it, I suppose. So world, again, tile map. Oh, did I do that wrong? I forgot a /. World tile map. And we might actually compile again. Nope. Not the trailing commas. I feel like every time I get that error for the rest of, as long as I'm streaming programming, every single time I do that, Devil's gonna be like, I told you so, trailing commas are stupid.
That happened. There we go. Let's do a nice little replace there. Oops, didn't mean to stick a Y in there. And then world becomes tile map, like that. There we go. Like this. Redefinition.
I should have bothered to make sure that that compiled. Still not compiling. It's an invalid type. Invalid type. What are you talking about, Willis? What on earth does that mean? Oh, because I didn't change it. Well, no, that's... Let's just go to... Oh, I can't go to definition here. Interesting. Is this just the language server? No, because the language server figured it out. Did I not save that change to here? Well, I guess I didn't change any of this inside of tile. So I need to do the same thing here. Yeah, I was jumping the gun a bit. That's better. Any other problems? Yeah, world position goes to tile map position. And still got some problems. I think these are still the same problems, basically. Oh, I need to import math. Well, okay, interesting. Will it let me import math in 2 different places? Why wouldn't it? Right? Well, maybe I don't even need to import. No, I definitely have a bunch of other math proc calls in main. So I guess we'll just try it and see. I don't see anything complaining about importing the same thing twice. But I think it's fine if it's all local to the package. To one package. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. I was getting worried over nothing. Yeah. Let's go back into the game main file and look at these. So why did those not... Oh, I didn't throw a G tag on the end of that. That's why. When I did this... Yeah, there we are. Oh. Whoops. We had some redundancies here. Oh, because I... Oh, geez. Yeah. I made that change happen twice. So I'll just put it in manually. Thinking too hard about this now. And now this line is way too long. How do I want to do this? Is that fine? Or how about this? That looks okay. Can't help the fact that the code is just so darn big. Uh-oh. Huh. What's going on with that? Why am I trying to slice into the one, what is that? The 14 millionth index. Why would he do that? The filled row should not be... Huh. I don't like that. Well, we can build fine, but I think once we go to run, that's going to be a problem. Yeah. $6,584,343 is out of range. Oh, it's much bigger. I see. This number is okay. Why did this happen? Why is the length of a filled row? I didn't change anything here. Not again. Has that address operator always been there? I don't understand what I did here. Something foolish has happened.
Tile chunk, that's right, this is tile chunk, not tile map. This, there we go. And now this stuff is actually stuff that gets allocated, or sorry, that gets handled by our tile map. So those will all be initialized. Well, I guess I can still do it this way for now, but I want to start moving things kind of over into a little bit more proper space. We'll see how that goes. Sorry, it's a little bit of dead time here, but I just got to kind of clean things up when you make a change.
So he's just going to start assigning everything to a plain tile map struct, which will then get stored in the world later, which is fine, which means I didn't need to do any of this stuff, right? So that's embarrassing. That's what happens. That's what I get for trying to work ahead of him. Right? And then where else are we doing this? I guess I can just, like, is it everywhere? When does he start going off the world? Clearly when I moved that stuff out, it did something really messed up to the way that we're filling in those temporary tiles, which, you know, he was about to scrap all that anyway, so I don't know why I care so much.
Like this, I guess world dot becomes tile map dot is a pretty safe change to make everywhere, so I will just make it. There we go. And now I thought we did world dot. There we go. Must have missed that guy. World position becomes tile map position as well. There we go. Doot, doot, doot. And now we've got a couple more of these guys. So world becomes tile map. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so everything is off the tile map. So all of these places where I'm doing stuff off of the world can just go away. Seems fine, but we still need to define the game world. So I'm wondering where he does that, and where does he, stick the tile map into the game world?
Here we go. And that brought up a good point, which is this is no longer is tile map point. And, oh, we already did that one as well. All right, good. So that should hope.
What was the issue with the for loop? Oh, this one right here. Basically, it's telling me that I'm trying to index a part of this slice that I've taken that is outside of the bounds of the slice. That's all there is to it. And it's confusing me because I've changed literally nothing about this code here. This is saying we have, a 2D array of tiles, 256 by 256, which is, whatever that value is. We iterate over the tiles that we actually want to fill, and we pull out those tiles one row at a time along with the index. And then we get at the actual empty row within the big 2D array of tiles that we care about by taking the address of that row at that index. And then I'm just trying to copy the filled tiles over into the empty tile map that we define. But again, he's just about to scrap all of this, but I'm just wondering why, because we should have been able to move all that code around and have things still build just fine. But we'll see what happens here.
Leave us exactly where we were, and it did. So what I want to do now is I essentially want to have a way to start writing to this tile map. What I want to be able to do is basically set the tile type of any place in the world. I don't care if it's particularly slow. I just want to be able to start writing to the tile map, right? So what I want to do is I want to do something that just starts making maps, basically. I don't know exactly how we want to do this. It's kind of a good question, and I'm not sure. But basically what I guess I would say is at startup now, when we kind of come in here, instead of having this thing, I don't really want to do this thing at all. We kind of had our 17 by 9 idea of how big a screen was. So I'm just going to vaporize this. Goodbye. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay.
Yeah, see, he's just going to wipe that code out. And so I'm going to do the same. I understand how that code works and how it got us to where we needed to get to, but I don't think there's a point in trying to keep it working when he's just going to blast it out of there anyway.
Okay, in our is initialized. When we are not initialized, we are going to go ahead and do a little world construction. I don't know how many screens we'll make. It doesn't really matter, but I'll basically say something like, screen X or screen Y equals 0, screen Y is less than, I don't know, let's say we make 32 screens in that direction. And 32 screens in X as well. I don't know why not. But basically what we're going to do here is we're just going to generate whatever random stuff we want to generate. So we'll go ahead in there, and then I'll say tile X equals 0, tile X is less than whatever we said that tile thing was. I think we said it was 17. In fact, I'll go ahead and basically make some kind of define for this here, which is that screen width is going to be 17, or tiles per width is 17, and tiles per height is 9. I think that's what we said. So we'll say tiles per width, and we will go ahead and do those, and we'll also go ahead and do unit 32, tile Y equals tile Y less than tiles per height.
All right, he's moving a little bit too fast for me. Got to keep in mind he's in 1.5 times speed, so I can't be too ambitious here and just let him keep rolling with it. Right, and then we want to get even more nested. So many for loops. I can hear my oldest is now awake from his nap. Probably going to wrap up the stream here. I didn't make it as far as I wanted to, as per usual. Still got 20 minutes of coding left at least, but that's okay. We can, depending on how much is left, we can pick back up where we left off from tomorrow, or I'll just work through the rest of this day on my own time. I might just start doing that because it's on me to stay on track and actually get one day done for each day of coding, right? And then if there's anything worth talking about, I can bring it up in the next stream. That's kind of the format I've been toying with here for a little bit now. So then we go over to the tile Y, tiles per height. And then for the tile X, we go over the tiles per width. And then we're just going to fill all this in.
So I'm just going to spam down some tiles here so that we can make a world. And actually, I guess at the outset, I might as well just spam zeros everywhere, because why not? So let's just go ahead and say set tile value, and we'll pass the tile map, which we haven't decided how we're going to get yet. And we'll pass the abs tile X, abs tile Y, and we'll say that we're going to set it to 0, which means that there's nothing in there. Now the abs tile X and the abs tile Y, abs tile X is just going to be equal to the screen X times however many there were per width, right? Plus whatever we're actually on for a tile, right? That's it. That's all we're doing here, right? So that's the absolute tile index. And then we're just going to go ahead and write some logic in here to actually make something. But at the moment, we can skip that. So we're going to do this. We'll spam that in there. That'll be nice. But we do have a problem, which is we don't really know where to get our tile map from. And so we are actually going to go ahead and get our tile map from our game state now. So we'll get rid of, well, you know what? We'll have the world, I guess. Or do we really need the world? Do we need the game state? I don't know if we should have a secondary structure for it. What the heck? Let's go ahead and do that. We'll just have a pointer to a world.
Got to actually instantiate those absolute tile values. And then this proc here, I think, is what we still need to define, because I don't think we have anything that does that. Clearly, you just need to bump Casey up to 2 times speed to make more progress. Yeah, I don't think that would... he would probably be borderline unintelligible at that point. I think I might be able to do 1.75, and I think I've done that before, but 2 times would definitely be hard to keep up with. And it's already hard to keep up with.
We'll have a tile map for that world, and we will have, well, I guess that's all we really need for now. So we will basically say that we have a world, which we will create here. So game state world equals some magic function that we're about to write, which gives us a world. We will then say that our world is that, and we will...
Okay, so I guess before, that's right, it wasn't even on the game state. Oh, well... Okay, well... This should already be 0 initialized anyway, because he's going to have to add it, right, to the state. So we can just say the world that we care about in this context is just going to be pulled off of the world. And I already know I'm going to have to do this, so let's just say that the world is, you know, a world. I don't know if that'll be a pointer or not, but... Well, I think it probably will be, right? Because that's what he's using to describe it. All right, he's saying that, well, yeah, because he uses the arrow syntax, so he has to be dereferencing to a pointer. So that's going to be a pointer to a game world.
We'll use that world, so our world...
And we got to pass that in here. Break that up.
Tile map, we will set the value. And we need to do all of this stuff only once now. We were doing it every update before. We don't need to do that anymore. We can basically do that once when we create that tile map. So basically what we'll do here is we'll say the world tile.
That makes sense. Why? I was thinking about this too while we were working through just the preliminary tile map code. I was like, why on earth? And I think actually the player height and width needs to stay outside of this. But why on earth would we do the work of generating those tiles every single time? And the answer is we don't have to. And then in here, right, like while we're initializing the game on that first pass, if we wanted to like load in some stuff that we had serialized out and like written to files to draw out the game world or whatever, we could do that. But for the sake of going the way he's going, he's just going to procedurally generate it all in the code. But we could easily, inside of here where we're initializing the memory, we could read it out from stuff that we saved. So it's not procedural every time, which is not an observation I would have made the first time I was working through this. Yeah, not quite wrapping up the stream just yet, but probably soon. I want to get to a point where we're at least compiling again, because it always feels good to wrap up a stream with a working program, but we'll see.
Map equals, I guess what we can do is say that it's going to be the address of something that we push. We need this thing again up here. I'm sort of skirting around something that we're about to write because that'll be probably the bulk.
I think he's about to implement an arena, or that's what he's alluding to. And I'm not sure what I want to do there. I think I want to try and use one of Odin's arenas, but I'm kind of worried that'll get us into a problem when we need to start pulling data out of that memory block to get it to be in the shape of the entity that, you know, we have stored there. I just don't know yet. So maybe I'll do it the way Casey is doing it and then circle back around to trying to do it with an Odin, you know, one of those baked in Odin arenas, like a, I think it would just be a static arena would be the, or maybe, I don't know if it's static or if it's growing. I don't think it'll grow. I think it'll just be set to a static size with a statically set block, right? I don't know. I have to look more into it and think a little bit harder about it, but it's not an answer I'm going to be able to come up with at the drop of a hat, or certainly not on the fly when thinking about it on stream. But I knew it was coming up in the near future, and I knew I needed to spend some more time thinking about it. So it's something I'll probably dig into off stream and then try and make sense of before trying to use those Odin arenas, because I'm not familiar enough. So far, every time I've needed memory, I've just done a good old-fashioned make, you know, the thing, whatever the type is, and then size of thing. And, you know, that's fine. And it uses the, the default allocator, context allocator, that you always get this context in every single Odin scope, but it's something that I want to go look at again. I've looked at it, I've read about it, haven't looked at it enough, but you can basically swap out this allocator, right, with an allocator that you choose, and then just all of your make calls from that point on will then use that allocator. So I can make an allocator out of an arena, which is what somebody else on the Odin Discord was telling me earlier this morning, and then just go, you know, hog wild, not have to really make any dramatic changes to the code, but I want to make sure that's actually what I want to do before I, you know, stick with that implementation. So for now, we'll just kind of keep trying to do it the way Casey does it. So the tile map is going to be this tile map that we're defining right here. I guess we'll see where he goes with this.
20 minutes is actually getting started on something that we haven't written yet that we need for this. But anyway, we'll then go ahead and write into this tile map. Well, I guess I can quickly just do a thing which says tile map dot equals tile map arrow. That will go ahead and take care of all these guys. Oops, didn't mean to do that. And then...
Beautiful thing about Odin, I don't have to do any of that. I can just keep using the dot syntax because Odin just lets you access pointers that way.
All I should have to do now is actually go ahead and grab that tile map out after we actually create it. So we'll basically do tile map star tile map equals world tile map. Okay, so we just have to do our allocation stuff here, which we haven't really made any system for doing any of that stuff yet. So we're
yeah, so that's what he's talking about, allocating the actual tile map to then hang around every single game loop inside of the game state. But this here, this tile map can be instantiated off of the world tile map.
We're going to have to go do that. And then we will go ahead and do our set tile value stuff, which will happen here. And we might have to pass that a little bit more since that thing is going to have to be able to push new pages and so on. So we'll do that. And then when we come out here, we will need to do exactly the same things that we did in here. We will need to take our game state structure and grab the tile map and stuff out of there, the world and the tile map. And so now tile map dot becomes tile map arrow. There we go, going in there. And let's see where we're at. So we haven't implemented those. The set tile value we haven't implemented, but we will. The recanonicalized position, that is no longer taking address of tile map. So address of tile map is just going to be tile map because now that's a pointer, so it doesn't need to take its address anymore. There we go. And what else we got? What else we got here?
Where did he drop that world?
Take its address anymore.
I didn't catch it.
And what else we?
Just outside of the initialization. So he's grabbing the data out of here and then redeclaring it out here to be used by the game loop from that point on. Well, and also that, because that's just when he's allocating the memory for all this stuff inside of the initialization block. So that makes sense. And then you're just going to pull this off of the tile. Pull the tile map off of the world that we just declared right here. And that way we don't have to always access it off of game state and world, right? So I think I can appreciate that. And then all of this just stays the same, because again, we don't need to use that arrow syntax. But it's complaining here. Well, we may not need to use the arrow syntax, but maybe because world is just now a pointer by default, pulling off the game state, we can get rid of all of these address of operators. I think that's basically where we're headed with this. He might have already had it set to be a pointer. And that was just something that was a small difference that I didn't catch.
What else we got here? Player left, player width. Okay, so the player width, we moved into somewhere unenforced. So these are actually still, we haven't done anything with the player yet. So the player width can stay out there. All right, so now we're down to just those two and the set tile value. Now what we can do if we want, all right, so now we're...
Okay, so he's actually in here. Just passing in the tile map off of the world, which... Oh, and then this here, I don't think needs to be here anymore. That is just gone, because this is where we're going to set it, right? Right in here is where we're going to be setting... My hair's flying out everywhere. We're going to be setting the... what we're working on now is where we're going to be setting what the tiles are inside of the whole world. But this is where we were doing that before, at the beginning of every loop. And so same thing up here. I want to leave this in here for posterity. But this is where he's going to allocate the world, I suppose. And then world.tilemap. Well, yeah. Yeah, so allocate the world, allocate the tile map. Just as a mental note for myself, in case we don't get to this.
We're actually still, we haven't done anything with the player yet, so the player width can stay out there. All right, so now we're down to just those two and the set tile value. Now what we can do, if we want to, is we can kind of skirt this for a second by actually just making it allocate ahead of time. I don't know if I want to, I'm going to go big or go home. I'm going to say let's just start this. If we don't finish by the end of the stream, it's not the end of the world. We're going to be getting into problems that are big enough that they don't fit inside one stream anyway, and so that's not really the end of the world. And I can do the super simple thing first, which is, okay, here's the situation that we have found ourselves in now, which is a good situation to be in because we need to do this eventually, and now is as good a time as any to get it started. We have a world that we would like to start setting tile maps in, and that means we would like it to persist. Now, if it's going to persist, it needs to be in our storage, our persistent storage for the game. And so what we want to do is we basically have this gigantic chunk of memory that we've got for storing the game state in. And what we want to do now is we want to start partitioning that memory up into stuff that we can use. Now, we already use a little bit of that game memory, just the first few bytes of it, for our game state structure, because we did that just as a test, right? We did that, and we're still using it to store the player. That's why the player's position can persist across frames. Now, what you may not have realized, and what we were doing that whole time, is we were recreating that tile map every frame. The way we were doing it before, remember, it was all in game update and render. So when we came into game update and render, it would just create the tile map on the stack, create the whole world right on the stack right there. We don't want to do that anymore. We actually want our world to be persistent. So what we want to do is we want to start using some of this game memory to store our tile map. But of course, we don't actually know how much tile map we actually need to store because we don't know how many of those pages are actually going to be filled. We virtualize our tile map, and so we only store places in the world that actually have tiles in them, but we don't know how many they're going to be. So what we want to be able to do is basically use a little bit of our bytes for the basic tile map structure, but then we want to allow the tile map every time it needs to basically take a little more memory and a little more memory and a little more memory from the pool in order to store those pages, right? In order to store those pages. So all we really need to do at the start, right? At the very start, we're not going to do anything too complicated here. All we need to really do at the start is just have something that can get us some memory in that permanent store. So basically what we need to do is we need to basically say, we've got a struct here, we've got a world. What I want to do essentially is I want to basically, have a thing that's like push memory. I want to basically get some memory. I want to put some memory onto the stack, or reserve some memory, grab some memory, however you want to think about it. And I want to basically, I guess I want to push a struct. I want to push world on here, right? So I want to get one of those, and then I want to do that again. I want to push the tile map, right? I want to be able to get those so that we can use them. Okay, hopefully that makes some sense. So I want to get those two things. And what I want to do furthermore is I want to be able to specify where those things go. So the world and the tile map, I want to make sure that we know exactly where they're going. So I'm going to say that I want to have sort of the concept of a particular pool, a particular place where this memory is coming from that allows me to sort of control a little bit more specifically where the memory is used.
All right, I didn't expect he would just jump right into doing this part, and he wasn't even sure himself, so so much hesitancy over things that if I just stuck, just kept on going, keep on coding, we'll get there. Hey, Biosphere. Just opened Twitch, and I don't know how long to see a channel I don't recognize in my follow list, but I have my suspicions, so I go looking and find out it's who I thought. It's James. I haven't watched in years. Felt like I needed to drop in to mention that whiplash I just got. Yeah, well, I'm hoping that this is the last channel rebrand that this Twitch channel will get. I started a new YouTube channel to avoid that problem, but I didn't feel motivated to start a new Twitch channel because I'm grandfathered in as a Twitch partner. So I didn't want to give up that privilege. So I just rebranded the channel, and hopefully Jam D's Codes is just, that's it. That's who I'll be for the rest of my internet existence.
So I'm just going to pretend I have one of those as well. I'm basically going to say that there is some new thing. I'm going to call it a memory arena because, sometimes that's a, it's an arena. It's a place where people fight, I guess. I don't really know. I'm going to say that I have this thing called a memory arena, right, that I'm going to be able to use to control these sorts of things. Basically
And this is what I was like, I'm always agonizing on stream. What do I do? What should I do? It's probably just better and safer to follow things the way Casey is doing them until I'm otherwise totally confident that I don't have to. But he's going to implement his own arena here, right? Whereas I just want to try and use Odin, right? And I think that kind of plays into the name, right? Like we're doing Odinmade Hero. I just want to do things as Odin-esque, Odin-like as I can. But we'll see, at which points it makes more sense to do things the way he's doing them, just because he's going down this whole handmade route that it won't necessarily always fit if I try to do things the Odin way. So like using an Odin proc from the math package here and there, that makes perfect sense because Odin just gives that to you out of the box, and it's a simple flooring thing. But with like pulling memory out of this arena and then shaping it into the thing that we care about, and it's going to be differently aligned entities in memory according to the type of entity they are at some point. And that's kind of where I'm hesitant to just use an Odin arena, because I don't know which arena is the right arena to use. I think, like I was saying earlier, either a growing or a static arena feels right, but we'll see. I just need to become a little more well acquainted with Odin arenas, and then we can be sure about what we want to do there.
Thing that will allow me to say where I want this stuff to be, and I'll just say that we basically have the world arena is the thing that the world uses for now. So I'm just going to say that we have that, and we'll see. Like I said, the way I like to code is to just kind of write the first thing that comes to mind and see how it works and go up from there. So I'm not going to even say what's in there yet. I kind of have a guess because I've written a lot of these before, but I'm just going to say I want to be able to say at any given time where things come from. So I'm going to say that these things come from that world arena, and then they'll just get added on there, right?
So instead of hand rolling our own push struct proc like we're about to do, right, I would use an Odin arena here, right? And then call one of Odin's built-in allocating procedures on that arena, because I'm sure there's some way to do that, or create like an allocator using that arena. And then instead of having to use these push struct calls, right, I would just say world.tilemap equals make my thing with, my allocator from my arena. And let's say, like we're doing here, I want to make a world. And I think it'll be a relatively easy jump from here to here, but I don't want to assume that. And also, it might take me a while to figure out how to do that on stream properly. So again, just doing things the handmade way until we're sure we want to go another route.
So given that's the case, I do need a way of initializing that world arena. I need to initialize that world arena with some memory, so I need to be able to say something like, initialize arena. I need to pass it the arena that's in question. In fact, these should probably be addresses, right, because they're modifying that arena. So I'm going to say I got that world arena. I need to initialize it, and I want to tell it where to put its memory, right? And the memory that I wanted is on this permanent storage. I don't have anything else that's going on the permanent storage at the moment, so I should probably be able to initialize that with wherever we are at the beginning of permanent storage. So I might basically say, all right, I don't know how big the permanent store is. Let me go ahead and see. I believe.
Well, we don't need to assign this because we're just going to pass this in by address, and then he's going to pass in the arena to these push struct calls as well as a pointer. And I think we're good with that.
I believe we passed that. At least I hope we did. On here somewhere. Let's see. Game memory, permanent storage size. So there it is, right? So we've got the permanent storage size. So I'm basically going to say, well, the permanent storage size of the arena, right? Excuse me. Permanent storage size minus the part we used, right? Which was the game state size of. Did I make my own size of? I don't think I did. We'll just use this. Size of game state. That is how big it is, and the pointer to it is just going to be the memory, that permanent storage, wherever that is. It's going to be that plus that game state structure, right? It's going to be. I'm just basically saying we're not going to touch that game state structure's memory. So we're going to point right after it. Does that make sense? So basically, I'm just going to say that I'm going to initialize that arena. I'm going to say you can use all the memory because we don't have any other arenas yet, so you can use all the memory that's in the whole thing. But what I want you to do is I want you to use it at the part that starts right after the game state, right? And then when we do this push, I want.
And this is the tricky part, right? Because we already have this memory here that we've allocated inside of the main program. And can I just hand that off to one of Odin's arenas and be like, hey, use this memory, right, to allocate stuff with? And that's the thing that I'm kind of unsure of, that I need to be more sure of before I just, sail away in that direction and then, wind up marooned and stranded on an island starving of thirst. When realistically, it would just mean, I got to make a lot of painful changes to code to unmess up the choices I've made. So he casts this to a multi-pointer, which I don't think we can do. Well, actually, yeah, we can. Can't we? I mean, we can just say this, basically. He's casting it to a multi-pointer, but we can just say, give me the raw data. And I think that works. Well, he's doing pointer arithmetic here, actually. So what we'd actually want to do, I think, is transmute this permanent storage into, well, it's already a byte, right? Isn't byte... Do I need to transmute it because a byte a slice of bytes is just U8, I'm pretty sure. So I don't think I need to transmute it, but maybe I should just for posterity here. And then instead of adding to the pointer, we would just index into it and say, give me everything after the size of the game state. I think that's it. I'm not sure what this warning is about. Expected one expression. I think I closed that prop call prematurely. Now what? Expected a statement. What have I done? Oh, that's good. Okay. Okay, so there's something else going on here. Well, we haven't written that procedure. But I think other than that, this will be good because I don't see an error. OLS isn't barking at me for this line. I think we'll be okay.
To get the memory out of there, please. That's what I would like you to do, right? And so all I really have to do now is I just have to implement those. I have to say, I've got this initialize arena guy. So I don't know, that's something that takes this arena and initializes it. So that takes this memory arena that it's using. It takes a size. So we don't have, do we have a size type yet? I don't know if we do or not. I hope we do, but we don't. We don't have one of those yet. So what did we actually define our memory to be? We defined it to be UN64s. That's probably not so necessary. That seems like maybe that's a bad idea. To make those be mandatorily UN64s, do we want to do that? Do we not want to do that? I'm a little torn. A little bit torn there. Just a bit. Just a teens. I want to know whether we should basically say that this is 64-bit, 64-bit, and 32-bit, and 32-bit. Seems like we probably should. You know, basically what I'm saying is, should we have something that's essentially a size T type? A type that, like the one that C defines, which basically is going to be the size that's necessary for a memory, to record however big memory could potentially be. I don't actually know which one of those I actually want to do. I don't know that I really need to deal with that right now, because I don't know that we're ever going to store anything that's above 4 gigabytes inside one arena. So many choices. Let's go ahead and say that we do have that. Let's say that we do have a size T, and that size T type, I don't know what I don't really have a good name for that one. So we could just call it size T, or something like this. We could call it, you know, a memory index, something like that. Something that actually can be the size of memory. I'm really not sure. We could call it an int pointer. We call it a lot of things.
Hold up. What the hell is a size T? What is a size T? I think he just said it, but... Oh, this is bright. That is really bright. Shield your eyes, children. It's just an unsigned type. So... I don't know what the equivalent of that would be in Odin. But you know what? I'm not going to worry about it right now. Maybe I can just use... Well, it did say... It did say unsigned type, so maybe I can just use a U64 here.
I do things a little bit differently in my own code, and I'm trying to think about what's the best thing to do for the circumstances that we're in here. And I'm thinking, yeah, that I just kind of want something like memory index or something like that. I'm going to call it memory index for now. Nothing else is going to use that, so we can always come back to that later and make it something else if we don't like it. All right, so we're going to have a memory index that's the size, and we can have a memory index that is the offset, or rather, that is the location. In fact, you know what? I guess this is just a pointer. This is the pointer, the storage area. So this is the storage, and that is all that would really need. So our arena will have those two things. It'll have the size.
So he's saying... this is a pointer. Is that a multi-pointer right there? That he's saying this... Well, it's going to be a slice. So why am I thinking so hard about this? It's going to be a slice to a U8. And then size, we'll just say, like I said, that that's a U64 for the time being. You don't have dark mode reader extension? I do not. I should probably get it, huh? That is messed up. The only reason he used dark mode in his editor is so he can hurt himself with his browser. Yeah, no, I mean, guys, I just write code. I try not to use a browser if I don't have to, which is why I've got, you know, my Odin language server. So I can just look at, if I could look through the entire internet in my editor, then that's what I would do. I would never touch a browser. But yeah, I come only from garbage collected languages. This is some wizardry. Yeah, I mean, so I professionally write Python and Elixir, and I've done Ruby in the past. I've done a bunch of JavaScript. So I'm right there with you, but that's what's been so nice about working through the Handmade stuff, is it's gotten me to appreciate this kind of programming and really enjoy programming again, because for a long time it was losing its luster for me. And then I started hacking away on the Handmade stuff in Zig, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. And then I discovered Odin, and I was like, wow, this is even better. Like, let's just keep going in this direction and see what happens.
It'll have the storage, it'll have the base pointer, I guess we can call that. And then we can just say, what we have our used amount, and our used amount is going to be 0 at the start, let's say, because we haven't used anything inside the arena. And then when we have our...
I see you switched that, dang it, to be the base. And wait a minute. Yeah. And then arena.used is going to be arena.used plus size or something like that. I'm imagining.
Our push struct our push struct is basically just going to be a function that returns some memory like this, and it is going to take that memory arena, like we said, and it is going to take a size to push, basically a size that we want to push on there. We're going to take the used size of the arena, we're going to increment it by the size, so we're basically using up a certain amount of the memory in there. And we're going to make the result be wherever the arena's base pointer would have been at that point. So the base pointer plus however much was used before the call is sort of the first free part of the arena. So that's where we'll return as our result. And then we'll say we use that much, and then we'll return the result. And of course, we would like to assert here. We'd like to assert.
So we are working with slices, so I have to keep in mind that I'm not going to be able to do this the way he's doing it. But it is giving me a better feel for how I would examine the use of one of Odin's arenas to do this work of allocating this stuff. So rather than going like indexing into the base of the arena, we're gonna index. Well, we're gonna do that pointer arithmetic, but using the slice syntax, right? So I think it's just like this. I get this size amount into the arena. Well, it would be... why can't I make sense of this? So he's... Oh no, my light died. For a second I thought my power went out and I was like, oh god, no. But it's just my light. Hold on. Now I look like a proper basement dweller in the dark here. There we go. Yeah, Darth James here to ruin all of the code. So we go, index into the base by the amount we've already used, the amount of memory in the arena we've already used. And I think looking at it this way, I'm pretty sure that we want a static arena for this stuff, right? Because we're never gonna grow the arena beyond what we've originally allocated in the main program. And then we say that our arena has now used this much more size, and I think he meant for this to be that size T type that he's using, but I'm gonna try and use the U64 and see if that is sufficient. And then like this, right? Well, what does this return? This is gonna return nothing. So he's treating it like a raw pointer, but we're actually getting back a slice of U8s, right? A U8 slice. I think that's right. If I can define the proc correctly. Oh, what the hell is this? Well, we don't have a base field, is that right? Where did I define this? We don't have anything in here, but this is going to be like this, right? And then use is going to be a U64. Why not? We'll go with it.
That the used amount plus the size is less than the total size of the arena, if that makes sense.
And the nice thing is I don't have to do that. I don't have to write this assert because we're using slices. So we're already going to have bounds checking in place, and it's going to tell us if we're using memory, trying to use memory outside of the amount we've allocated. So I think we're good there.
Or equal to, we could go right up to the end if we had to. And so then we'll do that push struct. Now what we want to do here is we want to be able to say push a struct that is this size, so we're going to need a macro for that, because basically...
Oh, when he initializes it, this, I don't know what happened there, but we're going to say that we used 0 bytes so far, right? And then the size is just going to be... What did we say the size was? Was it just an int, actually, on the... Maybe we'll just go with an int. I don't know. I don't know what the significance is, or if there's really any point to worrying about the fact that he's using a size T for that. But if I go to... Oh no, I did use U64. So I'm just going to do the same thing here. That'll be fine.
what we want to do is we want to say when you do a push struct and you give it a type, you give it the arena and you give it a type, we then call our push struct function. We do the cast here, we do the type star to cast it to the right type, whatever the person asked for, and we do the size of automatically for them so they get the right size back as well. And there we go when we pass the arena. So that's all nice and good. What are we complaining about saving? Okay.
Oh no. Well, may have been too ambitious to try and do this. I want to try and wrap up this stream soon, but I might be able to do it. I don't know. And this is also why I want to try and use one of Odin's arenas, because I don't want to have to do parametric polymorphism, as clever as it may seem, if I do not have to. But basically, he's wrapping the call to this thing with, yeah. Okay, I can see how this is. We're going to have to transmute or cast. That's what it is. We'll cast the raw data off the slice back to the return value we want from push struct. And I have to actually define that as a proc here. And he's defining it as a macro, which is fine, but we can't do that in Odin, so we have to think outside the box with parametric polymorphism. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it made sense to me instantly when I first saw it. So this is going to be T, $T, right? And then this is a type ID, I think. Yeah. And this is going to return the same type that we're passing in, so $T. If I can define a procedure correctly, and then we push struct, we call that wrapper, right? Or we're calling the wrapped proc here, this other push struct proc. That just takes in a boilerplate size. And we're going to cast the result of this back. And I think we can do that if, yeah, the slice we're getting back, we're going to get the raw data out of that slice, and then cast it to $T. I think that's going to work. I could also just say that this gives back a raw pointer instead of a slice. Maybe that's cleaner. I really don't know. Is there no type def in Odin? Kind of. I need to get back to you on that because I think there basically is, but I don't want to say for sure. This is where it'd be nice to have like an Odin contributor or expert listening in, but I'm not interested in advertising myself at those people because I don't know what they will make of me or what it is I'm doing here. They might think that, you know, this is a dumb thing to do. So, but I know I've read that the creator has talked about, I don't know if it was about parametric polymorphism though, where, so there's pound define, right? And then there's type def in C. But Odin has an understanding of how to do one of those things, and I think it might be type def, not pound define, because pound define, you know, is how you define a macro, right? And Odin doesn't have that specifically. So I think it is type def. I think Odin has type def, and I don't remember exactly how it's done or if this is what I'm doing here is approximating this, but what Odin does have is parametric polymorphism. And if I come down into the docs here, go into overview, I wonder if I just type it out, parametric polymorphism. Commonly referred to as generics, allow the user to create a procedure or data that can be written generically so it can handle values in the same manner. So, and the nickname parapoly is usually used. So that's all we're doing here. In Zig, I would have done this with comp time, right? But anyways, like I was saying, instead of calling raw data on the result of push struct, I think I just want to get the raw pointer out of the resulting slice that we're getting. And then we could say, okay, just cast that back to the type that was fed in. And then here, we just pass in the arena, and we pass in size of $T. And unless I'm a complete fool, I think this will work. Why are you expecting a semicolon? Interesting. I think it's because I was doing this cast wrong. Invalid use of a polymorphic parameter, I'm guessing is what that error is telling me. Invalid, blah, blah, blah. Can't talk. Invalid use of a polymorphic parameter, $T. Unneeded transmute. Okay. Well, that's good. Permanent storage. A slice of bytes is identical to a U8, so Odin is going to tell me that I don't have to... I can just say this, right? And then... where did that transmute go? Over here. We just won't do that. Right? Well, helps if you delete the thing you should delete. There we go. So yeah. Push struct as invalid type from raw pointer. What do you mean? I can't... Redeclaration of T. Oh, okay, hold on. I figured I wasn't doing that right. I think I can just get rid of the $. I think the $sign is used to like denote that it's a parametric or polymorphic parameter, right? But you don't need to keep using the $sign. Okay, now we've got a more useful error. I cast it of type world to a world pointer. Because this is a pointer. So should I just let him... Like, I see what it's saying, right? The game world pointer, or the game state... God, I cannot talk. The game state's world stores a pointer. And we're trying to take the value that we're getting off of push struct, right, and return it to assign it to that pointer. But I think that this just shouldn't be a pointer. Is that right? Did he make it a pointer? I don't remember.
So now we actually need to put those things in our arena. I forgot to do that. So we go in here and we say, there's our arena. We have got our memory index for the size. There we go. We've got our memory index, or sorry, our U8 star for the base, and then we have our memory index for the used portion. There we go. And let's see. What did I do? Oops. Well, no. What was the what are we complaining about? No, it takes memory arena. Did I typo that or something somewhere? I did. That's supposed to be memory index, not memory arena. So all we have to do now is implement that set tile value. That's going to be over in our...
Oh, just like that. Okay. That must not be a pointer. And... Okay. World... So if that's not a pointer... That means I need to take the address of this when I pull it out. And maybe that'll work. Cannot push struct arena size of T as world from raw pointer. Cannot push struct as world. Is this the same thing, basically? So the world is definitely still a pointer. Yeah. I get it. I'm supposed to... Okay, I think I know where I went awry here. We want to return a pointer to T. Right? Oh, well. Yeah. Like this, right? Why won't you let me do this? Cannot assign pointer to world a type to return statement. Is that all I needed? No. What if I just say result here? Whoa, that was not supposed to happen. Return result. I don't know why I'm struggling so much with this. I think it has to be like that. Yeah. Every time I do a cast to something where it's not just like one thing, like this works, right? If we want to cast to just a T object, well, we want a pointer to the world coming back from push struct. So now the only error we have is that we haven't implemented set tile value. Oh my goodness, he's doing it. He's making his dream a reality. His program is going to compile. He can feel it. It's going to compile. Oh my goodness.
We've got our memory index, or sorry, our U8 star for the base, and then we have our memory index for the used portion. There we go. And I did. Tile value, that's going to be over in our tile file. So we have to go ahead and implement that. You know what? I realized I forgot to put my index card up. Of course, it's a little late now, but that probably means I've been typing behind my head a little bit. I apologize for that. One of these days, I'm going to get around to writing the little thing that automatically puts a window there. I apologize for forgetting sometimes. Really, what I want to do is whenever my cursor goes there, it moves my head to a different side of the screen. That'd be future technology right there, people. You know what I'm saying? That'd be future technology. All right, so for now, the world of tile map, I'm going to go ahead and pass that arena in here as well, the world arena.
One thing I did notice is that my call here to push struct tile map, what's with the syntax highlighting on this one? How come my world is yellow, but my tile map isn't? Just kind of weird. Thought maybe that would be related to like some errors that I was not yet seeing, but I guess not. Anyway, we're so close.
But later we might sort of make it so that that's permanently sort of stored in the tile map so that it doesn't have to. But
okay, so we have to pass in the arena with all this. And is he gonna call it a world arena? I don't know. I guess we'll see. Abs tile X and abs tile Y, and then what was this 0 value? Oh, that's just the value we're setting it to. And are those all gonna be ints? Probably not. The world arena is just a memory arena. And there you go. Make sure what's that random capital doing in there? Okay. Over here, go ahead and pass in that. Does he just... He's passing it off the world arena, which he already has a handle to, doesn't he? Or does he not? I guess he doesn't. Okay. We have a handle to the world, not the world arena. So many things with world in them. And tile map, it's easy to get turned around. Is this already a pointer? What's going on? Is it a pointer?
Anyway, so I'm going to say that we have a memory arena here. We've got the arena. We have our tile map that we are trying to set the value in. We have our abs tile X, our abs tile Y, and then we have our tile value, right? So all we're really going to do here is we're just going to try and do the exact same thing that get tile value does, nothing different, right? We're just going to do exactly the same thing.
And those are all, that's right. The absolute tile X and Y are all U32s, and then the value itself is a U32, because it's the actual value at that tile. Makes perfect sense.
Get the tile chunk. But the difference now...
and like he just did, we can go ahead and rip that... where was that code? Did I not move it in here? I guess I didn't. That was... get world tile, it looks like. And is world point empty? Yeah, both of these need to go into the tile file. What is this reminding me of? Pile of files. This is reminding me of Parks and Rec, when there's just, somebody makes fun of Jerry. Tom makes fun of Jerry for a pile of files or something like that. Or somebody else. Somebody else in the office becomes the new Jerry. Somebody else in the Parks and Rec department becomes the new Jerry because they... Oh no, Tom is the one that gets made fun of, isn't it? Because he misspeaks and then everybody starts making fun of him for misspeaking. I think that's it. I'm sorry for that tangent. It awoke a memory in my brain that I forgot was there. So into the tile here, we go ahead and stitch that in. Did I say in the tile memory? It's at this point in the day when I just can't even speak or think correctly.
Is when that tile chunk, we want to be able to say if the tile chunk isn't there, we want to be able to create the tile chunk, right? We want to be able to say if the tile chunk comes back and actually is there, well, that's fine. We'll just go ahead and set it. But if it's not there, then we'll be very sad and upset and lonely in our life, and that would be bad. So what we want to do is we basically want to make a way that we can create tile chunks whenever we go to set a value somewhere and there is no tile chunk to store what should be there, right? So we go ahead and here we say if we do not get a tile chunk back, then we are going to go ahead and set that. So get tile chunk. If you remember, gets the... Well, you know what we could do? This might be a little premature now that I think about it. Let's just go ahead and assert tile chunk for now and put it to do there. Because what I'd rather do now that I think about it is we're at the end of the stream. I'd rather spend more time talking about that tomorrow. Even though it's not really what we'd probably do eventually. I don't want to quite do that yet. So we're going to assert the tile chunk. And we're going to put it to do on-demand tile chunk creation. But really, we're just going to take the tile chunk here, and then we're going to do that set. We're going to do like a set tile value. So we're going to do the exact thing here. We're going to basically mirror the get tile value in almost exactly the way that it works. But instead, we're going to call set tile value, and then back up at the top where we've got our get tile value call, which retrieves the tile.
Oh no. Yeah, so he's function overloading again.
We're going to call set tile value, and then back up at the top where we've got our get tile value call, which retrieves the tile value.
So there's this get tile chunk. Yeah. Okay, get tile. What is it? Get chunk tile. And he's going to call it set tile value, but I'm going to say set chunk tile just to make it easy.
We're just going to do the exact same thing where we do the inverse operation. Instead of retrieving the value, we change the value. So here, yeah. So here we go. And this also would be a set tile value unchecked. A little worried about maybe there's too many levels here. I wonder if maybe we should...
Yeah, you think so? I think there's too many levels here. Certainly starting to feel that way to me.
Should just only have one of those. But what are you going to do?
What are you going to do other than shut up and write the code? Right? I don't have any right to complain because he's showing me how to do all this stuff, so I just got to roll with it. Okay. Set tile value unchecked. Mostly the same deal here, but we're not returning anything, like he said. No result. And then over here, we're just going to set this to be, you know, tile value or whatever. I think I just called that value down here. Where did that go? Yeah. Make sure I actually say that's the tile value.
Well, we can always eliminate functions in the future. So there's our tile value. There we go. And so all we do is just reverse the sense of this setting. And there we go, like that, and compile. So.
And I guess we don't. No, we still want to do this bounds check here, I think. I mean, we should never be trying to set a tile inside of a chunk. Well, yeah, because this, well, I don't know. Yeah, because that gets a value if there's nothing there. But if we're passing in, this doesn't really check the right thing, now that I think about it. Tile chunk, I feel like this should be checking tile chunk.tiles, but I'm not going to worry about that too much right now. It's not checking for the right thing, because otherwise we wouldn't need this guard that I have here. But I needed it because I was trying to index into getting a tile within the tile chunk. And it was outside of the bounds of the slice. So maybe there's some other bug somewhere that I need to go and chase down, because we should never be passing in a nil tile chunk. But it could be just because of the way I was handling the 2D array before. So I'm not too worried about it, but that's something that I need to take a closer look at. And over here, test tile X and Y. Oh, he's still calling them test tile over here. How did I never see that? But we're just going to add in that tile value. And this is tile value, right?
We need to pass the actual value here. This does not return anything. Let's make that. Take the value. There we go. And
set chunk tile over here. It's not returning anything, like he just said. We make sure that our tile chunk is not nil still. And we need to pass in the tile value, which I'm not doing here either.
We don't need to return anything from you. We are passing the world arena by pointer now, and there we go. So now what will happen, of course, when we do this is we will crash immediately, or at least that's what I think we'll do, because we don't actually have those chunks at all. So we immediately.
And there we go. I want to get to that point. I want to get to the point where my program will compile and then immediately crash as soon as it runs. So let's do that, hopefully. And hopefully it crashes for the same reasons his does. Undeclared name, tile chunk value. Where is that? We don't. Oh, I didn't do any of this. I didn't finish making this call. But he asserts that the tile chunk is not nil. We'll raise that assertion once we get there. But tile map, tile chunk get passed in, and then the chunk that we got, and it's rel tile X, and it's rel tile Y, and the tile value that we're trying to set. And I think that might be a stream if this works. Cannot assign value tile chunk. Do I need to pass that in by reference? What's going on here? Cannot convert untyped value nil to tile chunk. This should be returning a pointer. That's why. And it doesn't. Yeah, so we're running into that same issue that I did at the end of the stream on Friday. Kind of. But maybe the way to think about this is we assert that tile chunk. I did it again. Files. Tiles. We assert that the length is greater than 0, maybe. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Or can we just say that we want to assert that the length of the slice, or do we want to assert that the slice is not nil? Does that work? That does work. Get chunk position tile map. That should be tile map. And I guess, oh, I did not change this everywhere. And I should have. Still can't assign. What are you complaining about now? Yeah, I just didn't change all of these references to world. And I think I'm safe if I go ahead and change that to tile map. Not found. Oh, there we go. Okay, and then we need to do the same thing with world. Why did that not change? What in the world? That's super weird. Why did this not get changed? A bunch of these didn't get changed. I must be some kind of simpleton. Because I cannot see why my little replace command didn't work there. Oh no. Okay, that works. Over here. And then over here. Oh. I feel like I could be really screwing this up here, because when we call get chunk position, are we calling it with the world in the game code? Get chunk. Okay, we don't do any of that in here now because it's all in here. So where is get chunk position being called? Yeah, no, that is correct. Okay. We just don't want to access the tile map member off of the tile map because that's not a thing anymore. Because we're just passing in the tile map directly. Okay. There we go. Now what? Get world tile. What is going on with this? It's all because of this world business. Why doesn't that work? Why? It's got to be because of the caret. Right? Like, why can't I escape the caret? I can. There we go. Okay. That makes sense. Oh boy. Okay, so now I just need to change all these world references to tile map. Same thing there. And signature too. I'm like afraid to change the whole file because I'm sure there are places where we're alluding to a world still that we don't want to replace. Or maybe not, I don't know. Maybe there's just no reference to a world in here. I'm afraid to just shotgun it. At the same time, this is taking... now I'm just mistyping things. This is taking forever. What is your problem now? Oh, because I'm accessing... Yeah. Same thing here. Are we good? Nope. Where was that? That was in... Okay. Game. Cannot assign... Oh, because is this still on the world? I didn't think... that doesn't seem right. If we get world tile, where is get world tile? That's what I thought. I don't know why. Why was it getting mad at me for accessing this off of the tile map? Is world point empty? Now takes the tile map. All of these take a tile map. Okay, now what? Of type int tu32. So those are ints. Can I assign value tile chunk of type tile blah 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 blah? In set tile value, he passes in the map. Why am I passing in the chunk then? That is the right call. Set tile, oh, because I'm, okay. That's because this is supposed to be set tile chunk. Or set chunk tile. Yeah. Yeah. We pass in. Okay, and then I guess I should just take the address of this. Is that right? Now are you happy? Other than these U32s you don't like? Tile map of type. Pointer to tile map has no field. Tile map. Oh, you're right. I missed that. I'm just zooming here, trying to get this thing to compile so it can crash. All this work so we can crash and burn. But I really want to wrap this stream up now. Yeah, you were right, Natalie. I had that carrot in there, and like I saw it and like I knew it. I thought I properly escaped it, but I probably went over here, and then when I didn't see the result I was expecting, that didn't work. Stupid. 83. Here we go. These two. Still have another world reference in here. When will it end? And then this can be same thing. Good. Oh, yeah. Gotta get that off of the tile map. Tile map has no tile map. It's just tile maps on tile maps on tile maps, man. When will it end? This is madness. We're so close. Okay. So in main, That's not where I thought I was gonna go. I'm in the wrong main. Right? Yeah. I see. So these, I think, as per usual, C is just turning these into U32s for Casey, but I have to explicitly cast them. Whoops. I think we did it. Maybe. It's not telling me that I hit an assertion, though, so that kind of scares me. Oh, no. What is the problem? I should be hitting this assert right here. Do we ever even get here? What is the deal? We never get there. So clearly something else is boned, and we never get past initializing our arena, much less all the tiles. Ugh, okay. So can we at least initialize the arena? We can. How about the game world? Can we initialize the game world? Or can we allocate, I guess I should say. Whatever. We can. What about here? Can we get a tile map? Just trying to think through what are all the things that we've been trying to do here and see which ones we're actually able to do. It looks like we're just seg faulting or something when we try to set the tile value, which is good. Let me make sure that actually, yeah. So we're getting into this loop just fine. But once we go to set it, somewhere in here, something is bogus, something is wrong. Let me split this up so I can track it a bit easier. Okay. And I feel like this should be, yeah, set tile value. I know that's what he's calling it. And then he's calling a different function by the same name in there, but I kind of want to stick to the convention that I had, which was like set tile chunk. But that's not really quite right either. Because we're not setting the whole chunk, we're just setting one tile. So it'd be like set tile in chunk. I think this should be set chunk tile. And this should be set tile and chunk. Because by this point, we actually have the chunk that we want to set the tile value in. And that means that the old set chunk tile gets renamed. Set chunk in tile. It'll do for now. I just want to keep this straight in my head. And at which point do we want to print? I mean, we know we're getting in here at least once, so if I call print, can we get the chunk position? What is going on here? Set tile value. That's right, I got to change it in main. Tile value. Wrong main, yet again. There we go. Set chunk tile. Maybe that's still wrong because we're not passing in a chunk here. We're just saying, we could just say set tile, but then we're getting closer to set tile value. I don't know. I'm overthinking that. Comment that out. Go back in here. Okay. Please. Can we get a chunk position? We can. Okay, what is it then? Let's print it out. It should be like 0, 0, 0 or whatever, right? All zeros. Because we're just setting, yeah, the very first tile chunk at the very first relative tile X and Y in the very first tile. So in here, well, have I just been freaking out about nothing and it's just not telling me that I'm hitting the assert? No. Okay, we're definitely doing something messed up when we try to get the tile chunk. So what is it? What is the deal here? We're passing in 0, 0. We're passing in the tile map. We calculate this index here. I don't get it. Where did that print go that I had? I just want to keep that around. So I guess we can just print out the, whoa, don't do that. Tile chunk index. And I did not mean to put that space in there. So we're just trying to get at the very first index of this tile chunk. It means that I think I did something silly here. Tile map tile chunk. That's just one tile chunk. Because there's no tiles there yet. So we're trying to get the first element of something that isn't there. But we do want where was that? Get tile value. Yeah, get tile chunk, the address of the chunks at that index. Saying there's nothing in this tile map, basically, right? Like if we print out the tile map. Oh no. Maybe we're just hitting the error, the thing that he's tripping. We're just hitting it ahead of time, right? Because there's nothing in there. So there's nothing. We're getting the address. We're trying to get the slice to the memory, and the memory isn't there because we haven't put any tiles in the tile map yet. I think that's all this is. Right? Because the way he's doing it, he just gets at the address of the tile chunk tiles, which is, you know, or no, yeah, get at the address of, yeah. So I think that's all that's happening here. So it just means that like where we want to do the assertion maybe looks different, right? Because and this makes sense now because we're asserting that it's not nil. But in order for it to not be nil, this has to work correctly. And if we print out the tile chunk, right, there's nothing there. Beautiful. So we did it. We caught up to Casey, and it only took me, how long have I been sitting here for? 3.5 hours to do what he did in an hour. So great. That makes me feel good about myself. No, but really, like I feel like this is a win, even though, you know, because Casey's program is, let me get rid of that format. I wonder if I could, can you just like do something like that to shut that up? Nope, you cannot do that. It's fine, I can just comment it out. So even though, you know, our program crashes as soon as we run it, it's crashing for the same reason Casey's is crashing, and I'm okay with that. I don't want to go any further. I don't think he's going to write any more code, but I'll take a look, and if he does, maybe I'll pick up right here where we left off, but maybe he's just going to leave it like this. Is the colon supposed to be there after the index? Yeah, so what you were seeing there is Odin's slice syntax, right? If we go back to here, what that is doing, right? So what Casey does is he's just taking the address of, he's indexing into this multi-pointer that is actually stored in the tile chunk. He has like a weird layer here where there's tiles in a tile chunk, but the tile chunk doesn't really do anything else. So this could really just be a member on the tile map, this slice. But I'm trying to do things the way he's doing them so that I just stick as closely to the, you know, handmade approach as possible, except where I'm very sure that I want to venture off course. So what he's doing is he's saying, you know, my tile chunk is a pointer to this tile chunk at this, starting at this index. But we can't do that in Odin. At least I don't want to do it that way in Odin, because Odin has slices, which means that I don't index outside of the bounds of the slice, right? Or outside of the bounds of the memory that I'm supposed to be able to access. If we were to do it Casey's way, not that there's anything wrong with the way he's doing it, right? But he has it as a multi-pointer, which is denoted like this in Odin. So I could access it. I could do it that way. I could assign this reference that way. And this goes back to the problem I was having on Friday, where I was trying to access this thing, but I was dereferencing a nil pointer to assign the slice to the member of this resulting tile chunk. And we just saw it work in the reverse here. But I was able to look at it and quickly go, okay, that's why that is happening. So the point is, to your point, what you're commenting on, this colon here says, give me all of the memory after this index, right? And then that's how we get at the specific chunk of tiles that we care about, right? We're looking in that, you know, big blob of memory to get at the exact place, right, where we want to get and then set the tile value. But we'll do that tomorrow, because I gotta go. It's after 5. And yes, it is accurately broken, exactly where we want to be. Thanks for hanging out with me on stream, those of you who've been hanging out. And I think I missed a couple follows. Kalayo, thanks for following. And then Encryptoid Galactic, that's a pretty heavy duty name. Kudos to you for that. Thank you for following. And anybody who's watched on YouTube over there as well, and subscribed or whatever, thanks to you too. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night.